Chapter 732. The star-plucking palace master's legs went soft, and he slumped to the ground. Even the star-plucking monarch had died in Yixing's hands. This was something that the star-plucking palace master had never expected. However, the star-plucking monarch was unwilling, extremely unwilling. If he couldn't capture Yixing, he wouldn't be able to answer to the Star Elephant Palace, Dark Moon Palace, and Demon Ceiling Valley. At that time, the three factions would definitely annihilate the star-plucking palace to vent their anger. Although they wouldn't slaughter all the martial artists in the star-plucking palace, the star-plucking palace master would definitely die. Delay. I just need to delay him for a bit. As long as I can delay until the mid-step kings from the Star Elephant Palace arrive and capture Xianxia, I'll have some hope of surviving. Otherwise, I'll definitely die. The star-plucking palace master thought to himself. He was already at the end of the road. Even though he was terrified of Yixing, he still decided to stall for time. The star-plucking palace master said, I'll hand him over immediately. I've already given the order to release Wuxia. He's locked in a prison deep within the mountain, and he'll need some time to come out. Yixing naturally knew that the kings from the Star Elephant Palace would definitely be teleported to a nearby location if they couldn't reach the star-plucking palace. At the very least, they would be able to arrive within 100 breaths of time. He naturally knew what the star-plucking palace master was planning. Yixing said coldly, I'll only give you 10 breaths of time. If you don't see him after 10 breaths of time, you can go to hell. The star-plucking palace master's face changed, and he said with a trembling voice, 10 breaths of time? How can 10 breaths of time be enough to walk out of the mountain? Young hero, 60 breaths of time. At the very least, he'll need 60 breaths of time to come out. Yixing glanced at the star-plucking palace master indifferently before shifting his gaze away, not saying a word. The star-plucking palace master let out a sigh of relief. He thought that Yixing would really listen to him and wait here for 60 breaths of time. At that time, he would find some excuse to stall for time. When the mid-step kings from the Star Elephant Palace arrived, everything would be over. 10 breaths of time passed quickly, and Wuxia naturally didn't appear. Yixing pulled the black profound bow in his hand, and immediately shot out a starlight ripple. The starlight ripple spread out in a fan shape, like a sharp blade, cutting the void in half. In an instant, it was right in front of Xianxia Palace Master. The Xianxia Palace Master was horrified. He never thought that Yixing would silently sentence him to death in his heart. Yixing was not far away from him. He suddenly launched an attack, and the starlight ripple's attack was so fast that even if the palace master wanted to dodge, he could not. He wanted to resist, but just as he raised his arm, the starlight ripples had already cut across his neck. Xianxia Palace Master's head immediately flew backwards. He saw a headless body appear in front of him. In the next instant, his consciousness vanished without a trace. Yixing raised his hand to kill the Xianxia Palace Master instantly. He raised his hand and put away the Palace Master's storage ring. Then, he took a step forward and appeared in front of Tang Bin. Tang Bin's legs trembled, and he fell to his knees with a thud. He kowtowed to Yixing, Young hero, please spare my life. Young hero, please spare my life. I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I have sinned deeply. Please have mercy on me. I will release Wuxia immediately. Yixing used the eye of clear cloud and said coldly, I can release him myself. I don't want to trouble you. You can die peacefully. At this moment, Tang Bin's heart was filled with fear, and his mind was relaxed. Yixing's mental energy source suddenly surged out a powerful mental energy and rushed into the space between Tang Bin's eyebrows, causing Tang Bin to lose his guard. In an instant, 2 cloudy vortexes appeared in Tang Bin's eyes. Yixing asked, Where is Wuxia locked up? Tang Bin's expression was blank as he pointed at a mountain peak several miles away. In the prison on that mountain peak, cell number 10 at the foot of the mountain. As a 7-star venerable lord, Tang Bin's mental energy was extraordinary. After being stupefied for 3 breaths, Tang Bin's expression shook as he came to his senses. At this moment, a cold light flashed. It was the starlight ripple that Yixing shot out with the dark crow bow. It passed through Tang Bin's neck, separating his head from his body. After killing Tang Bin, Yixing's figure streaked across the sky like a shooting star. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at the mountain peak that Tang Bin had pointed out. He activated his superbrain and quickly found cell number 10. He saw Gu Qingshan inside. Gu Qingshan was tied to a beam. His body was stained with blood, and his clothes were torn. Clearly, he had been severely abused and was currently unconscious. Yixing smashed the door of cell number 10 with a palm strike and entered. In a breath's time, Yixing rushed out with Gu Qingshan in his hand. Yixing held the dark crow bow and shot a starlight arrow into the sky. The light barrier that covered the entire star-plucking palace was instantly shattered. Yixing carried Gu Qingshan and flew into the sky. Soon, they disappeared from the vision of the star-plucking palace's cultivators. The star-plucking palace's cultivators were gloomy. The palace master and old ancestor were dead. Moreover, 3 Superforce's disciples had died in the star-plucking palace. It was obvious that the star-plucking palace had no future. Some of the star-plucking palace's cultivators took advantage of the fact that the Star Elephant Palace's experts had yet to arrive to leave the star-plucking palace. After more than 100 breaths of time, a 4-star king arrived at the star-plucking palace. Seeing that the sect's formation had been broken and the sect was in a mess, he was shocked from afar. When he found out from the star-plucking palace that the star-plucking palace master and star-plucking king were dead, and that the Star Elephant Palace master, Xianxia, and Xianxia had been killed by a young man called Xianxia, this 4-star king was both shocked and furious. Under the star-plucking palace's instructions, this 4-star king chased in the direction that Yixing and Gu Qingshan had disappeared. As a mid-step king, he could clearly sense the aura in the void and knew Yixing's flight path. However, after chasing for more than 1,000 li, this mid-step king stopped and revealed a look of surprise. He had chased until here, but the aura he had been following had disappeared without a trace. He searched the surroundings for a while but couldn't find any clues. Thus, he could only give up in anger. In a mountain range tens of thousands of li away from the star-plucking palace, Yixing and Gu Qingshan's figures appeared from the shadows and landed on the ground. Yixing's darkness force was only a step away from perfection. With his darkness force concealing his aura, unless it was a high-level astral sea realm emperor, no one would be able to discover his whereabouts. However, the star-plucking palace was only one of the weakest 3-star powers. Yixing believed that the Star Elephant Palace wouldn't send an emperor to help the star-plucking palace. Sending a mid-step king was already a sign of their importance. Therefore, Yixing wasn't worried at all. No one would be following them. His guess was right. That mid-step king indeed couldn't track him. By the time the Star Elephant Palace's emperor arrived, the aura in the void would have already dissipated. The world was so big. Who could predict where Yixing would go? At that time, even a demigod wouldn't be able to find him. Chapter 733. Yixing fed Gu Qingshan a healing elixir, and his astral energy entered Gu Qingshan's body. Soon, Gu Qingshan woke up. Big brother Yixing. Gu Qingshan opened his eyes, and his body trembled. When he saw Yixing, he was stunned and pleasantly surprised. In the past month, he had been imprisoned in the Xianxia Palace and had been tortured. As long as he was awake, he would be tortured by the people of the Xianxia Palace. Only when he was unconscious would he be spared. Every time he woke up, he would be tortured until he fainted. After he woke up, he would be tortured until he fainted again. This cycle repeated countless times. Every time he opened his eyes, he would be greeted with all kinds of torture. Today, when he opened his eyes, he saw Yixing. How could Gu Qingshan not be surprised? Yixing nodded at Gu Qingshan and said, "Don't be afraid. I've already saved you. You can focus on recuperating. When you've recovered, I'll bring you to a place." Although Gu Qingshan's injuries were not light, they were not fatal. Moreover, Yixing had fed him a top-grade healing elixir. It would not take too long to heal his injuries. Since things had escalated to this point, Gu Qingshan naturally could not return to the Gu clan. Yixing planned to bring Gu Qingshan to the Big Dipper Sword sect. Gu Qingshan was still very young, and his aptitude was not low. If he could become a disciple of the Big Dipper Sword sect, Yixing would not have to worry about his safety. Gu Qingchen looked at Yixing and nodded. He originally wanted to follow Yixing and roam the world. He did not want to stay in the Gu clan. Now that Yixing was bringing him away, it was exactly what he wanted. Moreover, Gu Jinyuan and Gu Jinyang had already died. He did not have the slightest bit of attachment to the Gu clan. A trace of sadness flashed in Gu Qingchen's eyes. Although Gu Jinyang was a servant, he had watched him grow up and had always taken care of him. Gu Jinyuan was also the only elder who had sincerely supported him to become the clan leader. Gu Qingchen was very pained by their deaths. Without strength, I can only be at the mercy of others, powerless to resist. I want to become strong. From now on, I want to be the master of my own life. I can't let the people who are important to me die for no reason. I want to become strong. Gu Qingchen shouted in his heart. The experience this time had made his heart extremely resolute. Gu Qingchen let out a long breath and calmed himself down. He closed his eyes and refined the healing spirit pill in his body, using its medicinal energy to heal himself. Yixing sat down at the side and took out all the storage rings he had obtained from the Star Plucking Palace to check the items inside. Xing Haidong, Xianyi, Feng Qingze, Lord Zhaixing, the palace master of Zhaixing Palace, and Tangbin were all killed by Yixing. Yixing took their storage rings and checked them all. As far as Yixing was concerned, middle-grade mystic-level weapons and materials could only be regarded as wealth and were not of much use to him. The only thing that was of direct use to him was that he had found a high-grade mystic-level metal mineral in the storage ring of the Star Plucker King, purple tier green gold. Once the Azure Cloud Wings absorbed the high-grade mystic-grade green gold, it could be upgraded to the high-grade mystic grade. At that time, Yixing's speed would increase greatly. Yixing held the Azure Cloud Wings in one hand and the purple tier green gold in the other. He used the Starfire Seed to refine the purple tier green gold and merge it with the Azure Cloud Wings. The upper-grade black-level metal ores were very strong, but in front of the Starfire Seed, they were easily refined. In about an hour, the green cloud wings had devoured all the purple teardrop green gold. The aura it emitted had increased by a large level, reaching the upper-grade black level. Flying wings were extremely precious, and their value was much higher than weapons of the same level. Starry Crescent Land was a mid-level land, and there were not many martial artists who had mystic-level upper-tier flying wings. Normally, only great emperors had them. Now that the Azure Cloud Wings had reached the high-grade mystic grade, Yixing's speed was basically invincible among kings as long as he didn't encounter any emperors. After an hour of treatment, Gu Qingchen's injuries were almost healed, and the two continued on their journey. With the high-grade Azure Cloud Wings, Yixing's speed had increased greatly. Yixing was very clear that if the Astral Elephant Palace's experts couldn't find him, they would most likely issue a bounty on him within the Astral Elephant dynasty. Yixing brought Gu Qingchen and avoided the cities, going to places with little people. The Yuezhou continent was considered a remote area in the Astral Elephant dynasty, only one continent away from the Big Dipper dynasty. 3 days later, Yixing and Gu Qingchen left the Astral Elephant dynasty and arrived at the Big Dipper dynasty. Although the Big Dipper Sword sect and Astral Elephant Palace were already enemies, Yixing still didn't dare to let his guard down in the Big Dipper dynasty. As a 4-star power, even if the Big Dipper Sword sect didn't have a grade 6 teleportation array, they still had a grade 5 teleportation array. An ordinary grade 5 teleportation array could send people tens of millions of miles away, and a grade 5 teleportation array could send people hundreds of millions of miles away. If the Astral Elephant Palace's experts got wind of the news, they could directly use the teleportation array to teleport to any part of the Starry Crescent continent. The Big Dipper dynasty was no exception. Yixing avoided the cities and towns along the way, taking many detours in the wilderness. After a month, Yixing and Gu Qingchen finally arrived at the Big Dipper Sword sect. Outside the Big Dipper Sword sect's mountain gate, Yixing cupped his fists towards the Big Dipper Sword sect's mountain gate guards and said, "I'll have to trouble you to inform Feng Xiaoxiao that my old friend, Yixing, has come to look for her." The Big Dipper Sword sect was worthy of being a 4-star power. Not only did the sect occupy a beautiful land full of spirit chi, even the guards were all astral-reaching realm experts. The leader of the guards was even a 7-star venerable lord. Although Yi Xing was a 9-star venerable lord, he wasn't worth mentioning in front of the Big Dipper Sword sect. Therefore, the guards didn't give him a second glance. However, when they heard Yi Xing mention Feng Xiaoxiao's name, their expressions changed. The 7-star venerable lord guard said, "You know our sect's young master?" Yi Xing was surprised. Only now did he know that Feng Xiaoxiao was actually the Big Dipper Sword sect's young master. However, he didn't show it on his face as he nodded and said, "Yes." The guard leader's expression immediately became a lot more respectful and said, "Young master, please wait for a moment. I'll immediately send someone to inform her." Big Dipper Sword sect, W Peak, sect leader's mansion. Feng Xiaoxiao was meditating in the backyard. At this moment, a third-level astral-reaching realm servant walked in. Seeing that Feng Xiaoxiao was meditating, he didn't dare to disturb her and stopped 10 meters away from her. After a few breaths, Feng Xiaoxiao opened her eyes and said, "What's the matter?" Although Feng Xiaoxiao didn't explicitly say that she wasn't to be disturbed while cultivating, if there wasn't anything important, the servant definitely wouldn't disturb her. That 3-star venerable said, "Young master, there's a young master at the mountain gate. He says that he's your old friend Yi Xing, and he's here to look for you." "Yi Xing?" Feng Xiaoxiao's face was filled with astonishment as she said, "Are you sure? He's really called Yi Xing?" Third watch, please double the monthly votes. Chapter 734. Yi Xing was a name that shocked Feng Xiaoxiao. In the Starry Crescent Land, Feng Xiaoxiao was known as the most demonic genius of her generation. She was also a rare demonic genius in the Starry Crescent Land. However, ever since she met Yi Xing in the extraterritorial Starland, Feng Xiaoxiao realized that Yi Xing was even more heaven-defying than she was. Feng Xiaoxiao believed that with Yi Xing's demonic level, he would definitely ascend to the top of the Starry Crescent Land and then come to the Starry Crescent Land. However, that would be 10 or even 20 years later. Now, less than 3 years had passed, and Feng Xiaoxiao heard the news about Yi Xing. Of course, she was dumbfounded. As far as she knew, to travel from the Starry Crescent Land to the Starry Crescent Land through the Void Tunnel required the strength of a 5-star king. When she and Yi Xing left the extraterritorial Starland, both she and Yi Xing were 1-star venerables. Now, only 3 years had passed, and Yi Xing already had the strength of a 5-star king? How was this possible? Wasn't his strength rising a little too fast? Feng Xiaoxiao's expression changed. She stood up and said, "I'll go and take a look." Like a gust of wind, Feng Xiaoxiao rushed out of the sect leader's mansion and rushed down W Peak. Soon she arrived at the Big Dipper Sword sect. From afar, Yi Xing sensed Feng Xiaoxiao's arrival and waved at her. A phantom shot from afar and stopped in front of Yi Xing. Feng Xiaoxiao's figure appeared and said in surprise, "Yi Xing, is it really you?" Yi Xing smiled and said, "You said that if I came to the Starry Crescent Land, I would look for you. Now I'm here. You don't welcome me." "Welcome, of course you do." Feng Xiaoxiao opened her arms and gave Yi Xing a big hug. Then, she looked at Yi Xing strangely and said, "I thought you would need at least 8 to 10 years to come to the Starry Crescent Land. You are too fast. It hasn't even been 3 years." The guards looked at Yi Xing in surprise. Yi Xing came from another Starry Crescent Land. This was the first time they had seen someone from another Starry Crescent Land, and they realized that Yi Xing was no different from them. As for Gu Qingchen, Yi Xing had told him where he came from on the way to the Big Dipper Sword sect. Feng Xiaoxiao sized up Yi Xing and asked curiously, "You're a 9th-star venerable lord now. That's only 1 realm higher than me. How did you pass through the void passage that connects to the Starry Sky continent?" Yi Xing said, "It's a long story. I came to find you because I have a favor to ask of you." Feng Xiaoxiao patted her chest and said, "If there's anything, leave it to me." "Yi Xing, now that you've arrived at the Big Dipper Sword sect, you're an honored guest of the Big Dipper Sword sect. If there's anything, we can talk about it inside. Come, follow me up the mountain. I'll show you around the Big Dipper Sword sect." Yi Xing patted Gu Qingshan's shoulder and followed Feng Xiaoxiao into the Big Dipper Sword sect. Feng Xiaoxiao looked at Gu Qingshan and said, "Is this a friend you made in the Starry Crescent Land?" Yi Xing nodded and said, "His name is Gu Qingshan. When I arrived at the Starry Crescent Land, I was severely injured. He saved me. If not for him, I would have been dead." Gu Qingshan was only a star marquis at the 3rd level of the Celestial Vortex realm. Feng Xiaoxiao did not think much of him. Now that she knew that Gu Qingshan had saved Yi Xing's life, she looked at Gu Qingshan with much more respect. Feng Xiaoxiao cupped her fists at Gu Qingshan and said, "I am Feng Xiaoxiao. Welcome to the Big Dipper Sword sect." To the Gu clan, the star-plucking palace was an unreachable existence, let alone the Big Dipper Sword sect, which was one of the 7 strongest forces in the Starry Crescent Land. If it was in the past, he would have jumped up and down in excitement if the young master of the Big Dipper Sword sect spoke to him so courteously. However, after experiencing some things, Gu Qingshan had become much more mature. He no longer looked like a 16-year-old youth. Although he was a little excited, Gu Qingshan remained calm. He smiled and cupped his fists. "It is my honor to meet young Master Feng. Big brother Yi Xing is also my savior. Young Master Feng, you don't have to be so courteous with me." Gu Qingshan's performance made Feng Xiaoxiao think even more highly of him. Moreover, Feng Xiaoxiao and Yi Xing had saved each other's lives. Therefore, Feng Xiaoxiao's impression of Gu Qingshan had improved greatly. Feng Xiaoxiao patted Gu Qingshan's shoulder and said, "All right, you don't have to be so courteous. You call him Big Brother Yi Xing, but you call me Young Master Feng. You are too courteous. You can call me Big Brother Feng as well. I am a few years older than you. How about I call you Qingshan?" Gu Qingshan smiled and nodded. "Big Brother Feng." When Yi Xing saw that the two of them were getting along, he was delighted. He said, "Feng Xiaoxiao, I came to the Big Dipper Sword sect to ask you for a favor. It has something to do with Qingshan. Can you see if Qingshan can become a disciple of the Big Dipper Sword sect?" "No problem." Feng Xiaoxiao agreed immediately. "With me around, you don't have to worry about him being bullied in the Big Dipper Sword sect." Gu Qingshan did not know that Yi Xing had brought him to the Big Dipper Sword sect to become a disciple of the Big Dipper Sword sect. He immediately looked at Yi Xing and said, "Big brother Yi Xing, what about you? If you don't have the protection of the Big Dipper Sword sect, the Celestial Elephant Palace, the Dark Moon Palace, and the Demon Ceiling Valley will not let you off." Feng Xiaoxiao's expression changed as she said, "Yi Xing, how did you offend the 3 great sects the moment you arrived in the Starry Crescent Land? Could it be that they recognized you?" It must have been the disciples of the Great Spirit sect, the Golden Lion sect, or the Moon Severing sect who betrayed you. Otherwise, the disciples of the Celestial Elephant Palace, the Dark Moon Palace, and the Demon Ceiling Valley have all died in the extraterritorial starlands. How would the 3 great sects know your name and appearance? Feng Xiaoxiao's words were related to the 7 great forces. Gu Qingshan was completely confused. Yi Xing smiled bitterly and said, "They did not recognize me. After I arrived in the Starry Crescent Land, I killed the disciples of the 3 great sections. At that time, I used the alias of Yi Xing, so, if the 3 great sects knew my name and appearance, they would probably know that Xianxia is Yi Xing." Feng Xiaoxiao suddenly laughed and said, "Yi Xing, I say, are you destined to have enmity with the 3 great sects? The moment you arrived in the Starry Crescent Land, the disciples of the 3 great sects actually offended you." "Ha!" Feng Xiaoxiao laughed and patted her chest. She continued, "It doesn't matter if they recognize you or not. Anyway, when you arrive at the Big Dipper Sword sect, they can only stare at you helplessly. Also," as Feng Xiaoxiao spoke, she revealed a mysterious smile. Yi Xing asked, "Also what?" Feng Xiaoxiao said, "Also, you have the opportunity to completely get rid of the 3 great sections. Yi Xing, I have to say that the timing of your arrival is too good. In 3 months, the Dark Star Holy Palace, a 5-star sect from a high-class continent, will come to the Starry Crescent Land to recruit disciples. If you are selected, you will be able to leave the Starry Crescent Land and head to a high-class continent. This is a once-in-a-century opportunity. Now that you have encountered it, Don't you think the timing is good? Chapter 735. Yi Xing was stunned. The words, Dark Star Temple, rang in Yi Xing's ears like thunder. Yi Xing looked straight at Feng Xiaoxiao and said, "Are you talking about the Dark Star Temple? The Dark Star Temple from the Dark Star continent?" Feng Xiaoxiao nodded and said, "That's right. Yi Xing, you even know about the Dark Star Temple?" Yi Xing's heart pounded. The Dark Star Temple. The founder of the Dark Star sect, Zhuangyuan, was originally a disciple of the Dark Star Temple. Later on, he accidentally passed through a crack in space and arrived at the Star Continent. When Yi Xing was in the Dark Star sect, he had read all the books in the Dark Star sect's library, including the notes left behind by Zhuangyuan. One of the notes recorded how he came to the Star Continent. Yi Xing had the super brain. Everything he read was scanned into the super brain, never to be forgotten. Now, the contents of the notes appeared in Yi Xing's mind. Yi Xing was very clear about the route Zhuangyuan took to reach the Star Continent. Didn't this mean that as long as Yi Xing reached the Dark Star Continent, he would be able to return to the Star Continent by following Zhuangyuan's route? Yi Xing still had too many things to do in the Star Continent. If he had the chance to go back, he would do his best to do so. Now, he finally saw the hope of returning to the Star Continent. Yi Xing was, of course, extremely excited. Yi Xing said excitedly, "I want to become a disciple of the Dark Star Temple. I must become a disciple of the Dark Star Temple." Feng Xiaoxiao continued, "Every 100 years the Dark Star Temple will come to the starry crescent land to recruit disciples. Each time, they will only recruit 10 people. Any cultivator below the age of 30 or 50 can sign up. Each of the 7 major forces will have 10 spots to sign up. After that, a competition will be held to select the strongest 10. Yi Xing, with your strength, you will definitely be accepted as a disciple of the Dark Star Temple." Feng Xiaoxiao had witnessed Yi Xing's strength before. He was even stronger than her, the #1 monstrous genius of the Star Moon continent in the past 10,000 years. Feng Xiaoxiao was now an 8-star High Lord. She was strong enough to fight against a 1-star king. As for Yi Xing, he was a 9-star High Lord. His strength was naturally even more terrifying. Yi Xing nodded and asked, "What about you? You should join as well." Feng Xiaoxiao nodded and said, "There aren't many kings below the age of 35 in the Starry Crescent Land. As long as you have the strength of a king, you will definitely be able to enter the top 10 and be accepted as a disciple of the Dark Star Temple. At that time, we will head to the high-ranked continents together." Ha! Gu Qingchen looked at Yi Xing and Feng Xiaoxiao with envy. Yi Xing and Feng Xiaoxiao were going to explore the high-ranked continents in the future. As for him, he was just a small character in the Starry Crescent Land. The envy in his heart made Gu Qingchen even more determined to become stronger. He decided that he would follow in Yi Xing's footsteps for the rest of his life. If there was a day when he could head to the high-ranked continents, he would definitely go there to take a look. With Feng Xiaoxiao's arrangements, Gu Qingchen soon settled down in the Big Dipper Sword sect and became an outer disciple. In the Big Dipper Sword sect, disciples below the astral reaching realm were all outer disciples. However, they were divided into Astral Star Realm and Astral Vortex Realm. They cultivated in different mountains. Feng Xiaoxiao was the son of the sect leader of the Big Dipper Sword sect. She had a very high status in the sect. With her recommendation, Gu Qingchen would definitely be greatly nurtured. After settling down Gu Qingchen, Yi Xing followed Feng Xiaoxiao to the sect leader's mansion on Dubhe Peak. The sect leader of the Big Dipper Sword sect, Feng Quangtian, received Yi Xing. "Father, this is the Yi Xing that I mentioned to you before. He saved my life in the extraterritorial Starland." In the main hall of the sect leader's mansion, Feng Xiaoxiao introduced him to Feng Quangtian. Yi Xing stepped forward and cupped his fists. "Junior Yi Xing greets Senior Feng." Feng Quangtian was at the 9th level of the Astral Sea Realm. His title was Emperor Quangtian. He was one of the strongest experts in the Starry Crescent Land apart from a few quasi-gods. Feng Quangtian looked like a middle-aged man in his 40s. He had a square face and a heroic aura. At this moment, Feng Quangqian's face revealed a gentle smile. He said, "No need to be so polite. Xiao has talked to me about you before. Thank you for saving her life in the extraterritorial Starland." Yi Xing said, "In the extraterritorial Starland, it was Brother Feng who saved me first. Otherwise, I would have lost my life long ago. Speaking of which, I should be the one thanking Brother Feng for saving my life. Senior Feng, you don't have to be so polite." Feng Quangqian chuckled and said, "I won't beat around the bush. I'm very happy that you've come to the Starry Crescent Land and become a guest of my Big Dipper Sword sect. Your grudges with the Astral Palace, Dark Moon Palace, and Demon Ceiling Valley are closely related to my Xiao. My Big Dipper Sword sect will not sit idly by." Yi Xing said, "Thank you." Feng Xiaoxiao said, "Father, when Yi Xing was at the same level as me, his strength was already higher than mine. Now that he's one level higher than me, his strength will definitely surpass mine. If he participates in the disciple recruitment competition of the Dark Star Divine Palace, he will definitely be in the top 10. I've already told Yi Xing to give him a place to register." Feng Quangqian nodded and said, "Our sect has 10 places to register, but only 1 or 2 can truly become a disciple of the Dark Star Divine Palace. Most of them are just there to join in the fun. Giving a place to little friend Yi Xing is a small matter. Little friend Yi Xing, if you can become a disciple of the Dark Star Divine Palace, our sect will be able to receive rewards from the Dark Star Divine Palace. At that time, we will have to thank you." Feng Xiaoxiao had already discussed the rules of the Dark Star Divine Palace's disciple recruitment with Yi Xing. Those who ranked in the top 10 and were officially accepted as disciples of the Dark Star Divine Palace would receive rewards from the Dark Star Divine Palace. Moreover, the higher the ranking, the greater the rewards. Yi Xing said, "The Big Dipper Sword sect has given me a chance. I will definitely do my best to fight for the glory of the Big Dipper Sword sect." Feng Quangqian had a satisfied expression. He admired Yi Xing very much and said, "Good. This emperor looks forward to your performance in 3 months. During these 3 months, you can stay in the sect leader's residence. I will let Xiao make the arrangements. This Big Dipper token is for you. With it, you can cultivate in any cultivation area of the sect." As he spoke, Feng Quangqian took out a token and tossed it to Yi Xing. Yi Xing caught the Big Dipper token and cupped his fists. "Thank you, Senior Feng." The Big Dipper Sword sect was a 4-star force. Every cultivation area was a treasure trove. Yi Xing could cultivate in any cultivation area. This was a huge benefit and Yi Xing was sincerely grateful. Feng Quangqian waved his hand and said, "Xiao, arrange for little friend Yi Xing to stay." Feng Xiaoxiao nodded at Feng Quangqian and then beckoned to Yi Xing. "Yi Xing, come with me." Soon, Feng Xiaoxiao brought Yi Xing to a courtyard and said, "You will stay here in the future. The courtyard next door is mine. If you have any questions, you can come to me at any time. There are many cultivation areas in the sect that are very useful. You have the Big Dipper token, you can try them out." Second update. Brothers, if you give me your support, I will give you my support. No matter how late I work tonight, I will give you my support. Please give me the double monthly votes in your hands. Chapter 736. A few days passed. On this day, a few guests came to the Big Dipper Sword sect. The leaders of the Astral Elephant Palace, the Mystic Moon Palace, and the Demon Ceiling Valley came together. Due to what happened in the extraterritorial Starland, the relationship between the Big Dipper Sword sect and the other 3 sects had dropped to the freezing point. However, the Big Dipper Sword sect couldn't fall out with the other 3 sects just because of this. Even though their relationship wasn't good, the Big Dipper Sword sect still received the 3 leaders politely. Duppy Peak, Big Dipper Hall. Vast Sky Great Emperor personally received the 3 sect masters, Star Aspect Palace's master, Dark Een Palace's master, 9 Candle Great Emperor, and Demon Ceiling Valley's master, Sealed Extinction Great Emperor. As leaders of the 7 strongest forces, they were naturally emperors, experts below the quasi-god realm. Emperor Vast Sky, let's not beat around the bush. The 3 of us are here for one thing, and that is for the Big Dipper Sword sect to hand over Yi Xing in the Big Dipper Hall the palace master of stellar aspect, the 10,000 elephant emperor, went straight to the point as soon as they met. Yi Xing has killed many of our disciples, so he must die. If the Big Dipper Sword sect wants compensation, we can discuss it, but you must hand over Yi Xing, the Mystic Moon Palace's 9 Candles Emperor said coldly. The Demon Sealing Valley's Emperor Fengju didn't say anything, but his gaze was cold as he stared at Emperor Vast Sky. Emperor Vast Sky's expression was completely different from when he met Yi Xing. His face was as cold as ice as he said, "Many of our sect's genius disciples have perished in the Outerium star continent. My son, Feng Xiaoxiao, almost perished in the hands of the disciples of your 3 great sections. I haven't even settled the score with all of you, yet you dare to come to my Big Dipper Sword sect and ask for him?" Emperor Myriad Elephant's face stiffened as he said, "It's normal for the younger generation to fight. Since ancient times, the disciples of our 7 sects have always had grudges against each other. It's normal for them to fight to the death. What's the problem?" 9 Candle Great Emperor said, "That's right. Haven't my Darkeen Palace's disciples died at the hands of your Big Dipper Sword sect's disciples? When the younger generation fights, it's fate if they die, but it's luck if they don't die. What's there to talk about?" Great Emperor Vast Heaven chuckled. "That's right. It's fate to die in a fight between juniors, but it's a blessing to survive. Yi Xing is only a young man in his early 20s, and the grudge between him and the disciples of the 3 sects is purely a fight between juniors. Yet the 3 of you have come to the Big Dipper Sword sect to demand him. Ha, are you juniors? If you think of yourselves as juniors, then you have to act like one in front of me. Come. First, pay your respects to your seniors. You." The 3 martial monarchs were furious. Even martial monarch Fengju, who had remained silent, was furious. Martial monarch Wan Xiang said angrily, "Feng Quangqian, Yi Xing isn't a member of your Big Dipper Sword sect. Are you going to go against the 3 sects for an outsider?" Great Emperor Vast Heaven laughed. "Xing Wan Xiang, do you think we're still friends?" Martial monarch 9 Candle shouted, "Feng Quangqian, don't make a mistake. If the 3 sects go to war with the Big Dipper Sword sect, you'll have to bear the consequences. Do you think it's worth it to let the Big Dipper Sword sect suffer because of an outsider?" Great Emperor Vast Heaven sneered. "Xianxia, my Big Dipper Sword sect has been around for tens of thousands of years. Do you think we'll be scared until we grow up? If it weren't for the fact that I cherish the lives of my disciples, I would have already declared war with the 3 sects when my son, Feng Xiaoxiao, returned from the extraterritorial starland. If you don't cherish the lives of your disciples and insist on declaring war, then fine. I'd like to see if anyone from your 3 sects will die after the war." Great Emperor Vast Heaven's stubbornness angered martial monarch Wan Xiang and 9 Candle monarch 9 Candle. Great Emperor Fengju snorted and spoke for the first time. "Feng Quangqian, the Dark Star Divine Palace has been recruiting disciples recently. Our sect and the Star Elephant Palace's disciples have always taken first place and had the most spots. Especially 100 years ago, our sect even had a 1-star blue life peerless genius enter the Dark Star Divine Palace. It's almost time for the Dark Star Divine Palace to recruit disciples again. When the time comes, many experts from our 3 sects will follow the team from the Dark Star Divine Palace back to the Starry Crescent Land. It's very likely that the balance of the Starry Crescent Land will be broken." "You're very stubborn now. When the balance is broken, I'll tell you clearly that the Big Dipper Sword sect will be the first to suffer. You'd better think about the Big Dipper Sword sect. Isn't it wise to offend us because of an outsider?" Great Emperor Vast Heaven's eyes narrowed and revealed a cold light. Great Emperor Fengju was right. The Dark Star Divine Palace's recruitment was indeed led by the Star Elephant Palace and the Demon Sealing Valley. It was because of this that the Star Elephant Palace and the Demon Sealing Valley stood out among the 7 major forces and became stronger than the other 5 sections. The other 5 sects only had 1 quasi-god each, while the Star Elephant Palace and the Demon Sealing Valley each had 2. Although 1 more quasi-god wouldn't be enough to break the overall balance, it would still have a huge impact. If the Star Elephant Palace and the Demon Sealing Valley had 1 or 2 more quasi-gods, the balance of the starry crescent land might really be broken. Once the balance was broken, the strong would inevitably swallow the weak. At that time, the top forces in the starry crescent land would no longer be 7, but 5, or even 3. The Big Dipper Sword sect hadn't produced a quasi-god for more than 1,000 years. The current quasi-god was already 1,500 years old and wouldn't live for more than a few hundred years. If there was no new quasi-god, the Big Dipper Sword sect would completely decline. They would either be destroyed by other forces or become a vassal force. Great Emperor Vast Heaven's eyes were filled with hope. With a genius like Feng Xiaoxiao in the new generation of the Big Dipper Sword sect, she would definitely become a 2-star quasi-god in the future. As long as the Big Dipper Sword sect could hold on for a while longer, when Feng Xiaoxiao matured and became a 2-star quasi-god, they would become the strongest force in the starry crescent land. One more quasi-god wouldn't break the balance, but a 2-star quasi-god in the starry crescent land would definitely break the balance. Great Emperor Vast Heaven still believed that the Big Dipper Sword sect would be the one to rule the starry crescent land in the future. Great Emperor Vast Heaven said, "The matters of the younger generation should be settled by the younger generation. Yi Xing will represent our sect in the disciple recruitment competition of the Dark Star Temple. If you want to deal with Yi Xing, feel free to let the younger generation deal with Yi Xing in the disciple recruitment competition. If Yi Xing loses, he can only blame himself for being inferior. However, if you want to take him away from the Big Dipper Sword sect, don't even think about it. This is all I have to say. Please leave, I won't see you out." The third update is here. Double monthly votes, anyone else? Chapter 738. Yi Xing spent 3 days consolidating the cultivation he had gained over the past month. 3 days later, Yi Xing arrived at the illusory profound formation. Like Whirlwind Valley, the illusory profound formation was divided into 6 levels. However, Yi Xing didn't choose the number 5 illusory profound formation. Instead, he chose number 4. In the number 5 illusory profound formation, the attacks inside were all at the level of a mid-level king. These were real attacks, not natural ones. Yi Xing couldn't block them at all. The attacks inside the number 4 illusory profound formation were at the level of a low-level king. Yi Xing could still break through. Yi Xing was only a 9th-star sovereign lord, but he had received the number 4 illusory profound array token. This caused the deacon in charge of the illusory profound array to be incomparably shocked. It was rare to see a sovereign lord who could fight against a sovereign lord. Among the disciples of the Big Dipper Sword sect, only the young master, Feng Xiaoxiao, had such heaven-defying strength. However, when Yi Xing took out the Big Dipper token, the deacon didn't say anything and gave the number 4 illusory profound formation plate to Yi Xing. The illusory profound formation was different from Whirlwind Valley. Many people could cultivate in Whirlwind Valley at the same time, but only one person could enter the illusory profound formation at a time. The disciples of the Big Dipper Sword sect had to spend contribution points to cultivate in the illusory profound formation. Moreover, the Big Dipper Sword sect didn't have many Star Sea Realm disciples. Soon, it was Yi Xing's turn. He's only a 9th-star Venerable Lord, but he dares to enter the number 4 illusory profound formation. Heavens, which genius disciple is this 9th-star Venerable Lord? Why haven't I heard of him before? It should be Yi Xing, who recently came to our sect. I heard that he's young master's friend. Yi Xing? The Yi Xing that the 3 great emperors came to our sect to ask the great emperor for? Yes, who else could it be? As expected of young master's friend. His strength is so heaven-defying. He dares to enter the number 4 illusory profound formation. He definitely has the strength to fight against kings. How long do you think he can last? How difficult is it for a venerable to fight against a king? I think he'll be blasted out in 20 breaths at most. 20 breaths? I don't think so. I think he can last 50 breaths. Maybe I can hold on for 100 breaths. You guys are looking down on him too much. I heard from Deacon Su Feng that Yi Xing stayed in Whirlwind Valley number 5 for a total of 38 days. Think about it, To what extent did he comprehend the power of wind to be able to persist for such a short period of time? Are you kidding me? 38 days? Absolutely. With such a high comprehension of the grand momentum of wind, even if he dodges with all his strength, he should be able to last for half an hour. Inside the illusory profound formation, as time passes, more and more attacks will appear. I think he can last for half an hour. Maybe it will last for more than an hour. Impossible. To last for an hour, his strength has to surpass a late-stage 1-star king. It's already amazing to be able to fight against a late-stage 1-star king. Surpassing a late-stage 1-star king, even the young master would find it difficult to do so, right? After Yi Xing entered the number 4 illusory profound formation, a large number of Big Dipper Sword sect disciples and deacons gathered outside the formation, discussing spiritedly. Time passed by amidst the discussions of the martial artists. Half an hour later, Yi Xing still hadn't come out. Half an hour later, Yi Xing still hadn't come out. An hour later, the illusory profound formation was very calm, but Yi Xing still hadn't come out. Even a late-stage 1-star king would find it difficult to last for an hour in the number 4 illusory profound formation. Yi Xing was only a 9th-star sovereign lord, but he had lasted for so long. This caused an uproar among the disciples and deacons waiting outside the formation. The news that Yi Xing had lasted for an hour in the number 4 illusory profound formation spread quickly in the Big Dipper Sword sect. More and more disciples gathered outside the formation to wait. Finally, the news reached the ears of the sect master, Vast Heaven Emperor. Soon, Vast Heaven Emperor arrived outside the number 4 illusory profound formation with a few emperor elders. The number 4 illusory profound formation is temporarily listed as a forbidden area. Without this emperor's permission, no one is allowed to enter. Everyone back off. Vast Heaven Emperor's majestic voice resounded. The martial artists of the Big Dipper Sword sect looked over and saw Vast Heaven Emperor standing in the sky, looking down at them. No one dared to disobey the sect master's orders. Although they were reluctant to leave, they had no choice. Under Vast Heaven Emperor's command, the Emperor Elders began to set up restrictions to block off this space and prevent others from spying on them. Yi Xing's strength would be exposed if he entered the illusory profound formation. Not all the disciples of the Big Dipper Sword sect were loyal. There might be spies from other sections. Even if there weren't any spies, the news of Yi Xing entering the illusory profound formation would spread. The martial artists of Star Elephant Palace, Darkeen Palace, and Demon Ceiling Valley would also receive the news and know Yi Xing's strength. This was obviously very disadvantageous for Yi Xing. Therefore, when Vast Heaven Emperor learned that Yi Xing had entered the illusory profound formation for more than an hour, he decisively sealed off the area of the number 4 illusory profound formation, not allowing anyone to know the exact time Yi Xing had entered. As for how the others guessed, it was up to them to guess. To be able to last for more than an hour in the illusory profound formation number 4, Yi Xing's strength is indeed higher than Xiao Er's. He might even be on par with Zhao Yanling. I wonder what rank he will get in the disciple recruitment competition of the Dark Star Divine Palace. My Big Dipper Sword sect has really picked up a treasure by using our sect's quota. Vast Heaven Emperor thought to himself, feeling very happy. The Big Dipper Sword sect was the weakest 4-star sect, while the Dark Star Divine Palace was one of the top 5-star sections. The rewards from the Dark Star Divine Palace were extremely valuable to any sect in the Starry Crescent Land. If Yi Xing could get a good name in the disciple recruitment competition, the Big Dipper Sword sect would receive a great reward. Vast Heaven Emperor waited quietly. Another half an hour passed, but the illusory profound formation number 4 was still calm. He won't be able to last for 2 hours, right? Vast Heaven Emperor thought to himself, feeling very excited. Lasting for 2 hours meant that one had the strength to surpass all 1-star kings. Such strength could easily rank in the top 3 among the 35-year-old juniors of the Star Moon continent. The 10 disciples recruited by the Dark Star Divine Palace would receive different rewards depending on their ranking. The 7th to 10th place was 1 level, the 4th to 6th place was another level, the 2nd to 3rd place was another level, and the 1st place had the highest reward. However, if one could get into the top 3, the reward would be generous enough. Inside the illusory profound formation, Yixing held the dark profound bow in his hand, his figure changing position like lightning, shooting out starlight arrows one after another. Every time a puppet martial artist appeared, Yixing would immediately kill it. As for the attacks of mechanical or hidden weapons, Yixing would always dodge them or use his archery skills to destroy them. As time passed, more and more puppet martial artists and hidden weapons appeared, but Yixing's movements also became faster and faster. In the intense battle, Yixing's potential was greatly stimulated. When he used his archery skills, the fusion of man and bow increased rapidly. Chapter 740. In the following days, Yixing used the number 4 illusion profound formation exclusively. Yixing could cultivate whenever he wanted to, and for as long as he wanted to. Ever since Yixing came out of the number 4 illusion profound formation and met Vast Heaven Great Emperor, Vast Heaven Great Emperor also left. Thus, the number 4 illusion profound formation became Yixing's private territory. Yixing was very grateful for this. Even if Vast Heaven Great Emperor treated him like this because he wanted him to fight for benefits for the Big Dipper Sword sect in the disciple recruitment competition of the Dark Star Divine Palace, Yixing was still grateful. Every day, Yixing cultivated in the number 4 illusion profound formation. Every time, Yixing only used the flame star and wholeheartedly relied on his archery skills to fight. After being blasted out of the illusion profound formation, Yixing recovered his energy and recuperated from his injuries. Then, he continued to cultivate in the illusion profound formation every day. Time passed day by day. Yixing stayed in the number 4 illusion profound formation for longer and longer periods of time. This meant that Yixing's combat skills with the bow were gradually improving. His fusion with the bow was also increasing day by day. After spending a total of 42 days, Yixing's attainments in archery finally made a qualitative breakthrough. His fusion with the bow had reached the 3rd level. The 3rd level of the fusion with the bow, the 9th transformation of the heart's desire. Yixing's attainments in archery had finally reached the prerequisite to comprehend the arrow intent. Next, comprehending the arrow intent would be his goal. Once he comprehended the arrow intent, it would be a great breakthrough in archery. The increase in his strength would be much higher than the increase in the fusion with the bow and the heart's desire. Moreover, once he comprehended the arrow intent, whether he used his fists, feet, palms, sabers, spears, or rods, he would be able to integrate the arrow intent into it. It would make all kinds of attacks contain terrifying power. Every move he made would be incomparably powerful. Whether it was the arrow intent, sword intent, saber intent, or fist intent, as long as he comprehended any kind of martial intent, he would open up a whole new world in the martial Tao. Arrow intent. I will definitely be able to break through, Yixing secretly said, very confident. Yixing left illusory profound formation number 4 and handed the formation plate to the deacon guarding the illusory profound formation. Then he returned to Dubhe Peak to pay a visit to Great Emperor Vast Heaven. In the main hall of the Patriarch's residence, Vast Heaven Emperor looked at Yixing with admiration and said, "You've cultivated continuously in the number 4 illusory formation for more than 40 days. You should have gained something." Yixing nodded and said, "I have reached the 3rd level of one with the bow. My goal has been accomplished. I will no longer cultivate in the illusory profound formation number 4 in the future. Senior Feng, please remove the restriction." Martial Monarch Vast Heaven was overjoyed. He said, "Great, your archery skills have reached such a level. You should be able to secure a spot in the top 3, or even fight for 1st place." Yixing said, "Who are the strong opponents this time?" Martial Monarch Vast Heaven said, "With your strength, only 2-star King Realm martial artists can be considered your opponents. They are Celestial Palace's Flowing Star Sword and Demon Sealing Valley's Feng Tinkin. Feng Tsungtin is a 2-star King Realm martial artist, but Flowing Star Sword is even more terrifying. This person is younger than Feng Tsungtin, and his cultivation is even lower. He is only a 1-star king realm martial artist, but he can challenge those of a higher level than him. Yixing asked, "They are all 2-star kings? Not 3-star kings?" Martial Monarch Vast Heaven nodded. Yixing immediately understood. After reaching the 3rd level of One with the Bow, he had already passed the 2nd stage of the illusory profound formation number 4. As long as his opponents were only 2-star kings, he was confident that he could take 1st place without using the Sagittarius constellation. Yixing said, "I have received a lot of benefits from your sect these days. I will fight for 1st place for your sect." Martial Monarch Vast Heaven's eyes brightened as he laughed. "Ha! Then I really hope that day will come soon." Yixing said, "That day should come soon. How much longer?" Martial Monarch Vast Heaven said, 5 more days. 5 days later, the Dark Star Godly Palace team will arrive at the Starry Crescent Land. Then, they will start recruiting disciples. All the competitions will be finished on the same day, and the team will leave on the same day. Yixing's eyes faintly shone with excitement. 5 days, he would arrive at the Dark Star Land in 5 more days, and then head to the Dark Star Godly Palace. As long as he could reach the Dark Star Godly Palace, there would be hope for him to return to the Starry Crescent Land. Yixing asked about Feng Xiaoxiao and learned that she was in seclusion training, trying to break through to the 9th level of Astral Reaching Realm. Feng Xiaoxiao's attainments in Sword Dao were extremely profound. She had already reached the 3rd level of One with the Sword. However, her comprehension of the worldly momentum was still inferior to Yixing's. If she could reach the 9th level of Astral Reaching Realm, she would also have the strength to fight for the top 3. In the next few days, Yixing consolidated his recent gains. Soon, it was the day before the Dark Star Godly Palace team arrived at the Dark Star Land. On this day, Feng Xiaoxiao ended her seclusion. It wasn't easy for an 8-star Reverend Lord to reach the 9th-star Reverend Lord level. She still hadn't succeeded, and still needed some time to accumulate. However, after reaching the 3rd level of One with the Sword, her strength had also increased greatly. She would be hard-pressed to find a match among the 1-star kings. Apart from Yixing and Feng Xiaoxiao, who were almost guaranteed to enter the top 10, the Big Dipper Sword sect also had a king disciple named Zhao Yanling, who was also guaranteed to enter the top 10. The Big Dipper Sword sect's results had always been poor in the Dark Star Divine Palace's recruitment. Only one disciple had made it in, sometimes not even one. This time, they could finally make a comeback, so Great Emperor Vast Sky was in a good mood these days. On this day in the Star Elephant Palace, Myriad Elephant Emperor instructed his disciple, Starry Sword, if you meet Yixing in the competition, kill him if you have the chance. Don't worry about anything. Starry Sword had become a 1-star king at the age of 28. Although he was only 30 this year, he looked as young as a teenager. He carried a sword on his back. Clearly, he was an expert in the way of the sword. Palace Master, Starry Sword will kill Yixing to restore the name of the Star Elephant Palace. Starry Sword's eyes were filled with determination and confidence. Although Starry Sword wasn't the most talented of the younger generation in the Starry Crescent Land, he was the strongest. He believed that no one under the age of 35 could match him. Although the Big Dipper Sword sect had a peerless genius like Feng Xiaoxiao, she hadn't become a king yet. Currently, the 1st place among the younger generation was still occupied by Starry Sword. Yixing was only a 9-star Reverend Lord. Although he had killed the 1-star King Zhaixing, Starry Sword didn't think much of him. After all, his strength wasn't something a 1-star king could compare to. Demon Sealing Valley, Great Emperor Fengju was also instructing his disciple, Feng Zhengyan. Those who could enter the outer realm were all geniuses. For example, Xing Luyang of the Star Elephant Palace and Feng Xiong of the Demon Sealing Valley were stronger than Starry Sword and Feng Zhengtian. They just hadn't matured yet. Yixing had killed the most talented disciple of the Demon Sealing Valley. Great Emperor Fengju couldn't allow Yixing to live. Would he be able to enter the top 100 today? The monthly votes would be great, and the explosive power would be even greater. Please double the monthly votes. Chapter 741. The day for the Dark Star God Palace to come to the Starry Crescent Land to recruit disciples had finally arrived. Early in the morning, Feng Xiaoxiao found Yixing and the two of them went to the Big Dipper Palace together. Including Feng Xiaoxiao and Yixing, there were a total of 10 young geniuses gathered in the Big Dipper Palace. Only one of them was a Star Sea Realm monarch. The King Realm disciple was called Zhao Yanling. She was the only King Realm disciple under the age of 35 in the Big Dipper Sword sect. Yixing had heard Feng Xiaoxiao talk about her before. Of the other 9 people, 4 were 9-star supremes and 5 were 8-star supremes. They all knew that Yixing was Feng Xiaoxiao's friend and that Yixing had stayed in the number 4 illusory mystic formation for more than an hour. His strength was at least at the level of a late-stage 1-star king. Therefore, they were all very respectful and friendly to Yixing. Today, the person sitting in the sect master's seat wasn't Vast Sky Emperor, but a white-haired old man. This white-haired old man looked like he was over 70 years old. He didn't have the slightest fluctuation of astral energy. He gave off the feeling of an ordinary old man. However, Yixing's pupils shrank when he saw this white-haired old man. Even Vast Sky Emperor was standing respectfully to the side. This white-haired old man was obviously not an ordinary old man. In the Big Dipper Sword sect, only one person had such a status. That person was the Big Dipper Sword sect's guardian expert, quasi-god Feng Hanxiu. This was the first time Yixing had seen a quasi-god. He couldn't help but feel excited. He didn't dare to look directly at Feng Hanxiu and immediately looked away. With Yixing's current cultivation, he was extremely sensitive to other cultivators. Even if a Star Sea Realm monarch or emperor were to hide their cultivation, Yixing would still be able to sense danger. However, Yixing couldn't sense any danger from Feng Hanxiu. The absence of danger was the true danger. This meant that Feng Hanxiu had reached a level where even Yixing couldn't sense him. This showed that the gap between Yixing and Feng Hanxiu was extremely wide. Feng Hanxiu's gaze swept across Yixing, Feng Xiaoxiao, Zhao Yanling, and the other young geniuses. His gaze lingered on Yixing. Obviously, he had heard of Yixing's name. Yixing's strength had surpassed that of a 1-star king, and he could compete with a 2-star king. Emperor Vast Heaven naturally reported this to Feng Hanxiu. The Dark Star Temple's recruitment was the biggest event in the Starry Crescent Land in the past 100 years. All 7 factions would send their quasi-gods to participate. Therefore, Feng Hanxiu personally led the Big Dipper Sword clan's team to participate in the recruitment. Every martial artist who was accepted as a disciple by the Dark Star Temple would become the backbone of their respective forces in the future. More than 80% of the quasi-gods and great emperors of the 7 strongest forces were once disciples of the Dark Star Temple. They only returned to the Starry Crescent Land after further study in the Dark Star Temple. Yixing. Quasi-god Feng Hanxiu's gaze lingered on Yixing as he called out Yixing's name. Junior is here. Yixing took a step forward and nodded slightly. Feng Hanxiu said slowly, I heard from Vast Heaven that you have the confidence to compete for first place? Yixing nodded and said, yes. Compete for first place? Apart from Feng Xiaoxiao, the other Big Dipper Sword clan disciples were all shocked. Whether it was Feng Tsangtian or Flowing Star Sword, their strength was not ordinary among the 2-star kings. To compete for first place, one would need to be a first-rate 2-star king. Feng Xiaoxiao was very clear that with his current strength, it would be difficult for him to find a worthy opponent among the 1-star kings. Yixing was stronger than him when they were at the same cultivation level. Now that he was 1 cultivation level higher than him, his strength would definitely surpass him. To Feng Xiaoxiao, it was normal for Feng Xiaoxiao to have the strength to compete for first place. Feng Hanxiu's calm eyes flashed with joy as he said, very good. If you have the chance to win, then do it. If you don't, then don't force it. The competition does not prohibit life and death. You have to be careful of the disciples of Star Elephant Palace and Demon Ceiling Valley targeting you during the competition. Yixing said, I will bear that in mind. Feng Hanxiu said, the Dark Star Temple comes to the Starry Crescent Land every 100 years to recruit disciples. Some of our 7 forces have yet to return from the Dark Star Temple. If they can't kill you in the competition, They'll definitely find another opportunity to do so once they reach Dark Star Divine Palace. If any of the martial practitioners from Star Elephant Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, or Darkeen Palace try to make things difficult for you, feel free to inform the martial practitioners of the Big Dipper Sword sect. I'll have Feng Xiaoxiao pass on my message and they'll help you. Yixing cupped his fists and said, yes. Feng Hanqiu stood up and looked away from Yixing. He said, let's go. Led by the quasi-god Feng Hanqiu, the sect master Vast Sky Emperor, and 3 peerless emperors, a total of 5 seniors led Yixing, Feng Xiaoxiao, and 10 others to the Big Dipper Sword Clan's teleportation array. Through the teleportation array, the Big Dipper Sword Clan team appeared in a desert at the extreme south of the Starry Crescent land. This place was called the Chaos Desert. The deeper one went, the more chaotic the space became. There were many layers of space and cracks in space. The passage between the Starry Crescent land and the Dark Star continent was located in the deepest part of the Chaos Desert. Only quasi-gods had the strength to pass through the passage and reach the Dark Star continent. One needed to be at least a second Nirvana quasi-god. In the middle of the Chaos Desert, there was a huge battle stage that spanned several dozen miles. It was covered by an array that prevented the wind and sand from blowing in. This battle stage and the array were set up by the Dark Star Temple's experts in the ancient era as a place to recruit disciples. Although the Dark Star Temple only accepted 10 disciples every 100 years, after 100,000 years, the number of disciples they had recruited had reached tens of thousands. The Big Dipper Sword Clan team arrived at the battle stage early in the morning, but some other sects arrived even earlier. Feng Hanqiu, Emperor Guang Tian, and the other quasi-gods greeted each other. Only then did Yixing realize that the first to arrive were the captains of the Golden Lion sect and the Moon Severing sect. The Golden Lion sect and the Moon Severing sect's captains were both 9th stage Astral Sea Realm Great Emperors. As for the quasi-gods, the Golden Lion sect's captain was a middle-aged man named Jin Hongqing. The Moon Severing sect's captain was a beautiful middle-aged woman named Qiumenjun. She seemed to be much younger than Feng Hanqiu. They were both first Nirvana quasi-gods with a lifespan of 2,000 years. Naturally, they were of the same generation. However, from Jin Hongqing and Qiumenjun's expressions, it could be seen that they respected Feng Hanqiu, who was almost twice their age. Not long after, the Great Spirit Sect's team arrived. The quasi-god of the Giant Spirit sect was a tall man without a single strand of hair on his head. He was bald and shiny, but he was not young. He looked to be in his 60s, much older than Jin Hongqiu and Qiumenjun. Old Ghost Hanqiu, I haven't seen you for 100 years. You're still the same. You're full of energy. Lu Zhenghong, your face has grown many wrinkles in the past 100 years. The Great Spirit Sect's quasi-god started chatting with Feng Hanqiu. Only 10 names away from the top 100. Begging for votes. Charge into the top 100. I'll continue to write my story. Today I'll explode at 6. Chapter 742. Lu Zhenghong was only 200 years younger than Feng Hanqiu. The two had known each other for a long time and were obviously more familiar with each other than Jin Hongqing and Qiumenjun. Lu Zhenghong glanced at the Big Dipper Sword sect disciples and said, Old geezer, this time, your Big Dipper Sword sect can't compare to my Great Spirit sect, hee. While speaking, Lu Zhenghong glanced at a King Realm disciple of the Great Spirit sect and continued, Feng Xiaoxiao hasn't become a king yet. Your Big Dipper Sword sect's King Realm disciple is only at the late stage of Astral Sea Realm. Our sect's Pengju has a cultivation at the peak of the first level of the Astral Sea Realm. His strength is unrivaled among one-star kings. Apart from Astral Elephant Palace's Meteor Sword and Devil Ceiling Valley's Feng Tian, Pengju can easily take 3rd place. Feng Hanqiu followed Lu Zhenghong's gaze and glanced at the King Realm disciple of the Great Spirit sect, Pengju. He chuckled and said, It's hard to say, hard to say. Lu Zhenghong rubbed his bald head and said, Old geezer, you're looking down on my sect's disciples. How about we make a bet? If Pengju takes 3rd place, it's my win. If not, it's your win. Feng Hanqiu looked at Lu Zhenghong with a faint smile and said, What bet? Lu Zhenghong thought for a moment and said, "Let's make a small bet. A top-grade profound weapon, how about it?" Hearing this, everyone's mouth twitched. A top-grade profound weapon, and this was only a small bet? The Big Dipper Sword sect's martial artists tried hard to hold back their laughter. Yi Xing wanted to fight for first place. Whether he could take first place or not was another matter, but if he could, he would at least be in the top 3. This bet was obviously Lu Zhenghong's loss. A top-grade profound weapon wasn't an ordinary item. Even many kings didn't have a top-grade profound weapon. This bet was obviously Feng Hanqiu's win. Naturally, the Big Dipper Sword sect's martial artists wouldn't cause trouble and forcefully held back their laughter. Feng Hanqiu was victory in his grasp. He smiled and said, "Baldy Lu, since you want to give me a gift, how can I not accept it? Let's bet." Looking at Feng's appearance, Lu Zhenghong had a bad feeling. However, Lu Zhenghong thought for a moment. Other than Flowing Star Sword and Feng Zhenqian, there was no other junior martial artist who could be a match for Peng Ju. The only person Lu Zhenghong was worried about was Feng Xiaoxiao. Feng Xiaoxiao's talent was too high. It would not be an exaggeration to say that she was the #1 genius in the Star Moon continent in the past 10,000 years. If Feng Xiaoxiao was a 9-star supremacy, Lu Zhenghong would be worried whether Peng Ju would be a match for her. Lu Zhenghong carefully sized up Feng Xiaoxiao. When he discovered that Feng Xiaoxiao was indeed an 8-star supremacy, he immediately relaxed. Lu Zhenghong chuckled and said, "Old man, don't try to be mysterious. I won't fall for it. Let's bet. Just wait for my disciple to take 3rd place, huh?" While Lu Zhenghong was laughing, another martial artist arrived at the arena. The number of martial artists that came this time was a bit too many. They were the teams of Astral Elephant Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley, and Dark Moon Palace. Astral Elephant Palace and Dark Moon Palace had always been close. Recently, Demon Ceiling Valley seemed to have joined this small group. The 3 major sects were on the verge of joining together. Astral Elephant Palace and Demon Ceiling Valley each had 2 quasi-gods. Their strength was stronger than the other 5 major forces. If they joined forces, it would definitely be a terrifying force. With the addition of Dark Moon Palace, it would be even more terrifying. The other 4 major sects only had 4 quasi-gods. However, these 3 major sects had 5 quasi-gods. In the Star Moon continent, quasi-gods were the high-end combat power that stood at the peak. The difference of 1 quasi-god was huge. When the teams of Astral Elephant Palace and the other 2 major sects arrived, the martial artists of Big Dipper Sword sect, Giant Spirit sect, Golden Lion sect, and Moon Severing sect all looked over with vigilance. When Myriad Elephant Emperor, 9 Candle Emperor, Sealed Extinction Emperor, and the 3 quasi-gods arrived at the arena, their gazes swept over the Big Dipper Sword sect's team. Soon, their gazes locked onto Yi Xing. 3 emperors and 3 quasi-gods all stared at Yi Xing with extremely strong spiritual pressure. Yi Xing immediately felt as if he was carrying a mountain on his back. That invisible pressure almost pressed him to the ground. Yi Xing circulated his astral energy and spread his legs apart like a mountain. He used all his strength to resist this invisible pressure. In the blink of an eye, his forehead was covered in sweat. When Feng Hanqiu saw this, he moved his feet and stood in front of Yi Xing, blocking the formless oppressive might. Xing Qingji, Feng Xiaoyuan, Shen Yuan. Feng Hanqiu's gaze swept over the 3 quasi-gods. He shouted, "You're all living like dogs. As quasi-gods, you're bullying a junior. Don't you think it's embarrassing?" Feng Hanqiu only spoke to the 3 quasi-gods. As for the 3 emperors, they were ignored by him. They were not qualified to speak to him on equal terms. The 3 quasi-gods withdrew their spiritual pressure. Xing Qingji snorted and said, "Feng Hanqiu, your Big Dipper Sword sect really likes to poke your nose into other people's business." Feng Hanqiu smiled faintly and said, "At least we don't bully others. We're much better than your Xianxia palace." Xing Qingji sneered and said, "Do you really think your Big Dipper Sword sect can handle this? The Big Dipper Sword sect can protect him for now, but can they protect him forever?" Feng Xiaoyuan said, "If the Big Dipper Sword sect hides him in the sect, It's not impossible for them to protect him forever. However, they actually dared to let him participate in the disciple recruitment competition of the Dark Star Temple. This is courting death. Old Ghost Hanxiu, open your eyes and watch. Yi Xing will die at the hands of my sect's disciple, Feng Zongtian. Behind Feng Xiaoyuan, among the disciples of the Demon Sealing Valley, a young two-star king raised his head with a proud expression. Xing Qingji smiled faintly and said, Brother Xiaoyuan, that's not necessarily the case. If Yi Xing is in the same team as my sect's disciple, Flowing Star Sword, the one who kills Yi Xing will be Flowing Star Sword. Dark Moon Palace's quasi-god Feng Yuan said, no matter who he meets, Yi Xing will undoubtedly die. The martial artists of the various sects all looked at Yi Xing. The Xianxia Palace, Dark Moon Palace, and Demon Sealing Valley had once issued a bounty on Yi Xing. This matter was known to all the martial artists of the 7 major forces. Now, the quasi-gods of the 3 sects had clearly stated that their disciples would kill Yi Xing in the competition. All the martial artists wanted to know if Yi Xing still dared to participate in this competition. Of course, Yi Xing would not back down. Feng Hanxiu was also very confident in Yi Xing. Since Yi Xing dared to fight for first place, his strength must be at a very high level among the 2-star kings. Even if Yi Xing was not a match for them, he would at least have no problem keeping himself alive. Although there was no rule against life and death in the competition, if the opponent admitted defeat, then they would have to stop. Feng Hanxiu did not believe that Yi Xing would be killed by Flowing Star Sword or Feng Zongtian before he could even admit defeat. Feng Hanxiu sneered in his heart and thought to himself, I'll let you guys have fun in your fantasies for now. When you see Yi Xing's strength, let's see if you can still laugh. If Yi Xing can defeat Feng Zongtian and Flowing Star Sword and take first place in the competition, at that time, their expressions will definitely be very interesting. Chapter 743. In the arena, the 7 factions were divided into 3 groups, each of them spread out in different directions. The teams of Astral Elephant Palace, Demon Sealing Valley, and Dark Een Palace were gathered together. The teams of the Big Dipper Sword Sect and Great Spirit Sect were gathered together. The teams of the Golden Lion Sect and Moon Severing Sect were gathered together. Jin Hongqing and Qiu Minjun exchanged a glance, then led their teams toward the teams of the Big Dipper Sword Sect and Great Spirit Sect. The other party's 3 major forces were too strong. The other 4 major sects could only fight against them if they worked together. Not long after the teams of Astral Elephant Palace and the other 2 sects arrived, the quasi-gods all looked toward the depths of the desert. They had already sensed that the team of the Dark Star Temple was heading toward the arena. After a dozen breaths of time, the great emperors also sensed it. After a few more breaths, the emperors also sensed it. By the time Yi Xing sensed a powerful fluctuation coming from the depths of the desert, the space in front of him split apart in the blink of an eye. A black spaceship about 30 meters long emerged from the void. This black flying ship exuded a terrifying aura that made one feel an urge to kneel before it. A supreme-grade profound artifact would never have such a powerful aura. It was clear that this was a divine artifact, and not even an ordinary one. The black flying ship passed through the array formation and stopped in the air above the arena. Every martial artist present, including the quasi-gods and great emperors, focused their attention on the black flying ship. The next moment, the cabin door opened, and a line of martial artists filed out. The first to walk out were 3 quasi-gods, 1 at the front and 2 at the back, none of them concealing their cultivation. The one at the front was a second Nirvana quasi-god, and the 2 at the back were both first Nirvana quasi-gods. Greetings, divine emissary. Below, the quasi-gods cupped their fists and called out in unison. The other martial artists hurriedly followed suit and bowed slightly. The second Nirvana quasi-god stood at the bow of the ship and waved his hand. No need for formalities. This quasi-god is Zhong Li Tao, and beside me are my junior brothers Fan Wengang and Siduhai. We are in charge of recruiting disciples from the Starry Crescent continent. On Starry Crescent land, the maximum number of martial artists it could accommodate was a second Nirvana quasi-god. Therefore, the highest cultivation level of the deity's Templar martial artists who had come to recruit disciples was a second nirvana quasi-god. If one's cultivation level exceeded that of a second nirvana quasi-god, they would be rejected by the laws of the world. As for true gods, they weren't rejected. However, the Dark Star Divine Palace recruited disciples from many mid-sized continents, but there were very few true gods. It was impossible for every continent to send a true god. Yes, Sir Divine Envoy, the quasi-gods replied in unison. At this time, Zhong Litao, who was standing at the bow of the ship, waved his hand and opened a layer of seal. He said, "Brothers of Starry Crescent Land, come out." The martial artists of the 7 superpowers were shocked. Every 100 years, 10 geniuses from the Starry Crescent Land would enter the Dark Star Temple. However, there would also be disciples who returned to the Starry Crescent Land to cultivate in the Dark Star Temple. With their individual strength, only true gods could travel from a high-grade continent to a low-grade continent. Those below true gods could only rely on tools. If the martial artists of the Starry Crescent Land wanted to return, they could only do so once every 100 years when the Dark Star Temple recruited disciples from the Starry Crescent Land. The Dark Star Continent was a high-class continent, and the Dark Star Divine Palace was a top-notch 5-star sect. In the Dark Star Divine Palace, there was a chance to raise one's cultivation to a higher realm. Not every martial artist who went to the Dark Star Divine Palace was willing to return. However, there were always some martial artists who missed their hometown. When they found it difficult to improve their cultivation level, they would return to the Dark Star Continent. Moreover, for example, a 9-star king was only an elite disciple in the Dark Star Temple. However, in the Starry Crescent Land, he was a great emperor. His status was completely different. This was one of the main reasons why martial artists who went to the Dark Star Temple to cultivate returned to the Starry Crescent Land. Every time, there would be 7 or 8 martial artists who would follow the Dark Star Temple team back to the Starry Crescent Land. Sometimes, there would only be 2 or 3 martial artists. The martial artists who returned to the Starry Crescent Land had cultivated in the Dark Star Temple for at least 100 years. Some had even cultivated for hundreds of years. The weakest of them was an emperor, a 9-star great emperor, or even a quasi-god. As soon as they returned to the Starry Crescent Land, they would become the pillars of their sections. Of course, the martial artists of the 7 major sects were looking forward to the return of their own martial artists from the Dark Star Temple. Every martial artist who returned would be a powerful force that would greatly improve the strength of their sections. As soon as Zhong Litao finished speaking, 4 martial artists walked out of the cabin. The 4 of them exuded a faint fluctuation of astral energy. They did not hide their cultivation level. One of them was a second nirvana quasi-god, 2 were first nirvana quasi-gods, and 1 was a 9-star king. When the martial artists of the 7 major sects saw this, they all had different expressions. The martial artists of the Dark Moon Palace, the Golden Lion sect, and the Great Spirit sect were obviously disappointed. None of the 4 martial artists were from these 3 sections. As for the other 4 sects, the martial artists of the Celestial Elephant Palace were the most surprised. The second nirvana quasi-god with the highest cultivation level was Star Silver Death, who had been accepted as a disciple by the Dark Star Temple 200 years ago. Star Silver Death was a 1-star blue fate. He was the most talented genius of the Celestial Elephant Palace in the past 1,000 years. Unexpectedly, after 200 years, he was already a second nirvana quasi-god. His cultivation level was 1 level higher than his heaven's fate. Clearly, he had encountered a great opportunity in the Dark Star Temple. The martial artists of the Demon Sealing Valley were also surprised. Beside Star Silver Death stood a sexy and enchanting beauty. She was also a quasi-god, a 1 nirvana quasi-god. She was Feng Nongying, who had entered the Dark Star Temple 100 years ago. The Celestial Elephant Palace and the Demon Sealing Valley's strength were already at the top of the Starry Crescent Land. They each had 2 quasi-gods. Now that they had another quasi-god, how could they not be surprised? This was especially true for the Celestial Elephant Palace. The return of a second Nirvana quasi-god was something that had never happened in the Starry Crescent Land in the past 10,000 years. A second Nirvana quasi-god was enough to break the balance of power in the Starry Crescent Land. As for the martial artists of the Big Dipper Sword sect, they were both surprised and worried. The other quasi-god was Feng Junyue, who had been accepted as a disciple by the Dark Star Temple 300 years ago. His fate was a 9-star blue fate. To be able to become a quasi-god, he must have encountered a great opportunity. Feng Hanqiu was already old. The Big Dipper Sword sect finally had a successor. This was something to be happy about. Moreover, in the next few hundred years, the Big Dipper Sword sect would have at least 2 quasi-gods. This would greatly increase their strength. This was something to be happy about. However, the martial artists of the Big Dipper Sword sect were not happy. The Big Dipper Sword sect was strong, but the Celestial Elephant Palace and the Demon Ceiling Valley were even stronger. The balance of power in the Starry Crescent Land had been broken. In the next 100 years, the Starry Crescent Land was destined to be turbulent. The ones who stood at the top of the Starry Crescent Land would not be the Big Dipper Sword sect, but the Celestial Elephant Palace and the Demon Ceiling Valley. If these 2 sects joined forces, they would have the strength to destroy the other strongest forces. It's already the 5th update. It's almost midnight. By the time I finish writing the 6th update, it should be 1 in the morning. But I said I'll do it no matter how late I work. Brothers, I'm begging for another monthly vote. Thank you. Chapter 745. The aura of a second Nirvana quasi-god burst out. Other than the star Nirvana quasi-gods, everyone felt a terrifying pressure. It was very uncomfortable. Junior brother's silver death. Just then, a voice sounded in the sky. Wherever the sound wave passed, Star Silver Death's aura disappeared without a trace. Zhong Litao stood at the tip of the black spaceship and looked down. Today is the recruitment day of the Dark Star Temple. Junior brother Xing, please don't cause trouble. Although his words were polite, his meaning was obvious. Star Silver Death didn't have the final say here. Star Silver Death's face froze. As a second Nirvana quasi-god, he was a famous figure among the disciples of the Dark Star Temple. His status was similar to Zhong Litao's. If he wanted to kill a 9th star supremacy, wouldn't it be as easy as killing an ant? However, things were different now. Now that Star Silver Death had returned to the Starry Crescent Land, his status in the Dark Star Temple was very different. He couldn't kill a disciple of the Dark Star Temple in front of Zhong Litao. Star Silver Death retracted his aura and said, Senior brother Zhong, Yixing has a huge grudge against the Celestial Elephant Palace. Senior brother Zhong, please give me face and let me deal with him. As a second Nirvana quasi-god, Star Silver Death was very confident. Although he lowered his status in front of Zhong Litao, he didn't lose out. Zhong Litao said indifferently, let him participate in the competition first. If he's ordinary and can't become a disciple of the Dark Star Temple, you can deal with him however you want. However, if he becomes a disciple of the Dark Star Temple, I'll have to take him there. Star Silver Death's face darkened. If Yixing couldn't become a disciple of the Dark Star Temple, he could deal with him however he wanted. What Star Silver Death meant was that if Yixing could become a disciple of the Dark Star Temple, he could deal with him however he wanted. This meant that Zhong Litao didn't give him any face at all. Star Silver Death glanced at Flowing Star, who was among the disciples of the Celestial Elephant Palace, and gave him a murderous look. Then he smiled faintly. He won't become a disciple of the Dark Star Temple. He'll be a dead man. Zhong Litao said, as long as Astral Elephant Palace follows the rules, you can play however you like. But you can't break the rules. Alright, that's all I have to say. Hand over the slots and the competition will begin immediately. The 7 quasi-gods, Feng Hanqiu, Lu Zhenghong, Jin Hongqing, Qiu Minjun, Feng Xiaoyuan, Xing Qingji and Xian Yuan, flew onto the black spaceship and handed the 10 quotas of their respective sects to Fan Wengang and Siduhai. After the quasi-gods of the 7 major sects handed over their quotas, they disembarked from the black spaceship and went back to their respective places. Every time, there would be a quota of 70 people. However, only 10 people would be able to become disciples of the Dark Star Divine Palace. There was already a set of rules for the competition. The first 3 rounds would be an elimination system. In the first round, 35 out of 70 people would be selected. In the second round, 18 out of 35 people would be selected. In the third round, 9 out of 18 people would be selected. After the 3 rounds, the top 9 would be divided into 3 groups. The 3 who won would be the top 3, and then the 3 would face off against each other to determine the final winner. In addition, the strongest person among the martial artists who were eliminated in the first 3 rounds would be selected to join the top 9 in the group to become disciples of the Dark Star Divine Palace. The rules were fixed, but the order of appearance of each quota was arranged by the 3 divine messengers. In order to prevent the strongest from meeting each other at the beginning and being eliminated, each major sect would mark the strongest person among the 10 quotas. When the divine messengers made the arrangements, they would first separate the strongest person among the 10 quotas. Fan Wengang held the Big Dipper Sword sect's name list in his hand. He smiled and handed it to Zhong Litao. "Senior brother Zhong, take a look." Zhong Litao took a look at the list and smiled. He saw that the most powerful person on the list was Yi Xing Zhao Yanling, and Feng Xiaoxiao had also been marked as powerful. Interesting. Zhong Litao smiled when he saw the cultivation bases of Yi Xing and Feng Xiaoxiao. One was a 9th star supremacy, while the other was an 8th star supremacy. After a while, the 3 divine messengers decided on the first round's battle list. Zhong Litao said, "The competition will now begin. The first round, the first match, Ezian versus Yang Wenshuan." In the middle of the arena, there was an independent space. The 2 names that Zhong Litao called would enter this space to fight. No matter what method was used, as long as one could defeat the other, they would win. The battles continued one after another. Although it was not a matter of life and death, most of the battles were peaceful and no lives were lost. Until the 11th battle, when Flowing Star Sword of Celestial Elephant Palace fought against Feng Wanyun of the Big Dipper Sword sect. Feng Wanyun was directly split into 2 halves. Only then did the battle become bloody and cruel. Feng Wanyun was a 9th star supremacy. His strength was worlds apart from Flowing Star Swords. When the battle began, he did not even have time to admit defeat before he was killed by Flowing Star Sword. This undoubtedly provoked the hatred between Celestial Elephant Palace and the Big Dipper Sword sect. The martial artists of the Big Dipper Sword sect were all furious. Even Yi Xing, an outsider, was furious when he saw this. He wanted to kill Flowing Star Sword. On the black flying ship, the 3 divine messengers saw this and immediately changed the battle list. They separated the disciples of Celestial Elephant Palace and the Big Dipper Sword sect to prevent them from fighting each other. Yi Xing fought in the 27th battle. His opponent was an 8th star supremacy of the Moon Severing sect. Naturally, he was easily defeated. The number of battles in the first round was the most. It lasted for nearly 2 hours. 35 people were eliminated. The remaining 35 people continued to fight in the second round. 35 people would fight in pairs. 1 person would get a bye. This bye naturally fell on the 2-star King Feng Zhengqian, who had the highest cultivation base. Yi Xing's opponent in the second round was a 9th star supremacy of the Golden Lion sect. He also won easily. An hour later, the second round ended. In these 2 rounds, no 9th star supremacy with extremely strong battle strength was eliminated. The 10 people who were accepted as disciples of the Dark Star Divine Palace were among the remaining 18 people. Of the remaining 18 people, 7 were kings, 10 were 9th star supremacy, and 1 was an 8th star supremacy. To be able to win 2 rounds in a row, the weakest of them was a peak half-step king. The third round was the most anticipated battle. The winner would definitely be accepted as a disciple of the Dark Star Divine Palace. According to past practice, the 3 divine envoys would continue to avoid the strongest cultivators from the 7 sects and arrange them to fight in different stages of the competition. However, this time was an exception. Zhong Litao placed Yi Xing, who was the strongest of the Big Dipper Sword sect, and Jin Guangxing, who was the strongest of the Golden Lion sect. Seen your brother Zhong? Fan Wengang was surprised when he saw this. Zhong Litao raised his hand and stopped Fan Wengang. He said, "This is me giving face to Star Silver Death. Yi Xing lost so he can deal with it. If Yi Xing's battle strength is really strong and can defeat kings, this god will naturally not let Star Silver Death touch him." Catch up on yesterday's first update. Something delayed me yesterday. Sorry. Chapter 746. First match of the third round, Jin Guangxing vs Yi Xing. Zhong Litao's voice soon came from the black flying ship. Feng Hanqiu, Vast Sky Emperor, and the rest of the Big Dipper Sword sects upper echelons were surprised. They had clearly marked Yi Xing as the strongest on the list. According to convention, he shouldn't meet a King Realm expert in this round. This was because every sect could only send one King Realm disciple. As a one-star king, Jin Guangxing was also the strongest on the Golden Lion sect's list. Feng Hanqiu glanced at the three divine envoys on the black flying ship and immediately understood that the divine envoys had given Star Silver Death, a second Nirvana quasi-god, face. In Xianxia Palace, Xingyin Death smiled when he heard this. If he had a choice, killing Yi Xing in the competition was definitely not the best result. As a second Nirvana quasi-god, Star Silver Death had many ways to deal with Yi Xing. He was very sure that Yi Xing would regret being born in this world if he fell into his hands. Xing Qingji, Wanxiang Emperor, and the rest of the upper echelons of the Star Elephant Palace were all smiling. They were in a good mood. Even though Yi Xing had killed the one-star king, Yi Xing didn't think that he would be a match for Jin Guangxing. Jin Guangxing was at the late stage of the first level of the Astral Sea Realm, while the Star King was an ordinary one-star king. The two weren't even on the same level. Although the Big Dipper Sword sect's martial artists were surprised, they weren't worried. Yi Xing was confident in getting first place, so he was at least a two-star king. Jin Guangxing wouldn't be able to stop him. Yi Xing walked out from the Big Dipper Sword sect's team and arrived at the independent space in the center of the stage. A tall man with a head full of golden hair quickly appeared in front of Yi Xing. It was the King Realm disciple of the Golden Lion sect, Jin Guangxing. The news that the Star Elephant Palace, Dark Moon Palace, and Demon Ceiling Valley wanted Yi Xing was heard by the other strongest forces in the Starry Crescent Land. However, only a few people knew that Yi Xing had killed the Star King. The Star-plucking king was only an ordinary one-star king. His death was a big deal in the Yuezhou, but compared to the entire Starry Crescent Land, it was not that big of a deal. Besides the Star Elephant Palace, the Darkeen Palace, and the Demon Ceiling Valley, even the Big Dipper Sword sect did not know that Yi Xing had killed the Star-plucking king. Jin Guangxing obviously didn't know. Jin Guangxing looked arrogant as he looked down at Yi Xing and said, "Yi Xing, I've heard of your name. You're wanted by the Star Elephant Palace, Dark Moon Palace, and Demon Ceiling Valley. If you can't become a disciple of the Dark Star Divine Palace, your fate will be miserable. However, this doesn't mean that I will go easy on you. I also want to become a disciple of the Dark Star Divine Palace. Therefore, you will be eliminated in this battle." Yi Xing looked at Jin Guangxing indifferently and said, "I don't need you to go easy on me." Jin Guangxing didn't understand the meaning behind Yi Xing's words. He nodded and said, "You have a backbone. It seems like you won't admit defeat directly. Very well. I'll beat you until you admit defeat." As soon as he finished speaking, Jin Guangxing's golden hair fluttered and a terrifying aura burst out. He looked like a ferocious lion going berserk. "You'll be defeated," Jin Guangxing shouted and punched at Yi Xing. Behind Jin Guangxing, a gigantic golden lion appeared. As the fist blasted out, the image of the golden lion instantly condensed into the fist aura. Bang! The golden fist was like an enraged lion, rushing towards Yi Xing wherever it passed. The void shattered and waves of energy rolled out. Facing Jin Guangxing's terrifying attack, Yi Xing's expression remained unchanged as he took out the profound crow bow. Darkness energy gushed out from the profound crow bow, forming a huge black vortex in the air. As soon as the black vortex appeared, it swallowed the golden lion fist aura. The golden lion fist aura was like a clay ox entering the sea, disappearing without a trace. Yi Xing's unity of man and bow had reached the 3rd level. His strength was much stronger than when he killed the star-plucking king. The power of the profound crow bow in his hand had multiplied. The spectating cultivators were shocked. They didn't expect Yi Xing to have such strength using a bow as a weapon. It was clear that his unity of man and weapon had reached a very high level. Moreover, the surging darkness energy proved that Yi Xing's comprehension of the darkness force was extremely high. Low-level kings could still see that the man-weapon unification was at the 3rd level. However, only emperors and above could sense the darkness aura's realm. Yi Xing was only a 9th star venerable lord, but his darkness force was only a step away from perfection. This shocked many emperors. Bang 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 bang, Jin Guangxing punched out again and again, each punch faster than the last, each punch stronger than the last. However, Yi Xing held the profound crow bow and didn't move half a step. With a light stroke, all of Jin Guangxing's golden lion fists were dissolved by the black vortex. How was this possible? Jin Guangxing was shocked. He couldn't believe that a 9th star venerable lord wielding a mid-grade profound bow could have such strength. In the blink of an eye, Jin Guangxing punched a dozen times. After being dissolved by Yi Xing, he decisively used his astrology. Whoosh! A ray of starlight soared into the sky, turning into a golden star. It was an extreme metal element astrology. Golden starlight fell, causing Jin Guangxing's strength to soar. His entire body was blooming with golden light, revealing a terrifying aura. Whoosh! Yi Xing also used his astrology. A fiery star floated in the sky. It was also an extreme astrology, but its power was even greater than Jin Guangxing's metal element astrology. Golden lion possession, fist shaking the 9 heavens. Jin Guangxing roared. The clothes on his upper body were torn to pieces, revealing his powerful body. He formed a hand seal and golden lion phantoms appeared behind him. In the blink of an eye, these golden lion phantoms shrunk and imprinted themselves on Jin Guangxing's body. The small golden lion imprints were vivid and lifelike, containing a terrifying power. Lose for me. Jin Guangxing strode forward. Like a flash of golden light, he appeared in front of Yi Xing in an instant. His fist was blooming with golden light as it smashed towards Yi Xing. Wherever the fist passed, the void collapsed. Although there was no astral energy, the fist force was restrained. Once it landed on the target, it would explode with even more terrifying power. Yi Xing held the black crow bow in his hand. The darkness element energy had already dispersed, and in its place was surging fire element energy. The grand perfection of fire element energy circulated. Combined with the extreme fire star, the fire element energy was like a sea of fire, containing an earth-shattering power. Facing Jin Guangxing's fist, Yi Xing swung the black crow bow horizontally. The fire star energy exploded like a long whip. Boom! The fist collided with the fire star energy, creating an earth-shattering explosion. A terrifying aura rushed out in all directions in an instant. Yi Xing did not even take half a step back, but Jin Guangxing's body shook violently, and he was forced to retreat again and again. Yi Xing took a step forward, and the black crow bow once again exploded with a terrifying fire aura, smashing towards Jin Guangxing. Boom boom boom! In the blink of an eye, Yi Xing attacked several times in succession. Jin Guangxing vomited blood and was sent flying. Make up for yesterday's second update. Continue to ask for votes. Chapter 747. Hiss. Some of the younger martial artists couldn't help but gasp. Jin Guangxing was tall and strong, and his aura was overwhelming. As a king, he was actually sent flying by a 9-star venerable lord. This scene was hard to believe. The formidable martial artists above the king-ranked martial artists were shocked as well. Yi Xing's powers were beyond their expectations. The elders of the Big Dipper Sword sect also heaved a sigh of relief. Although they had guessed from Yi Xing's words that Yi Xing was a 2-star king, seeing was believing. Now that they had seen it with their own eyes, they felt more at ease. On the black spaceship, Zhong Li Tao, Fan Wengang, and Sidahai looked at Yi Xing and nodded. Obviously, they were very satisfied with Yi Xing's strength. In the Astral Elephant Palace team, Star Silver Death's face was gloomy and unhappy. His plan to slowly torture Yi Xing had failed. Unless Starstream Sword killed Yi Xing in the competition, he wouldn't be able to stop Yi Xing from going to the Dark Star Divine Palace. Star Silver Death looked at Starstream Sword again, and the meaning in his eyes was self-evident. In the middle of the arena, in the independent space, Jin Guangxing flew a few miles before falling to the ground. Yi Xing didn't chase after him. If Jin Guangxing was smart enough, he would admit defeat. I admit defeat. Jin Guangxing stood up and immediately admitted defeat. Thank you for letting me win, Yi Xing said as he returned to the Big Dipper Sword Sect team. After winning this battle, at least he was confirmed to be a disciple of the Dark Star Divine Palace. In a high-class continent, in a 5-star sect, Yi Xing was looking forward to the rest of his journey. What he was looking forward to even more was the hope of returning to the Star Continent when he reached the Dark Star Divine Palace. Meng Tai, you probably didn't expect that I would return one day. When I return to the Star Continent, the Great Yuan Dynasty will be turned upside down, Yi Xing thought to himself. In the third round of battles, Jin Guangxing was the only king who was defeated. The other 6 kings' opponents were all 9-star venerable lords, and they all won, becoming one of the top 9. As for the other 2 in the top 9, one was Feng Xiaoxiao, who had defeated a 9-star Paragon Lord opponent. The other was Xing Liuyi, a disciple of Celestial Elephant Palace. Although he was a 9-star Paragon Lord, he had the strength to contend against a king. The Big Dipper Sword Sect's disciples' recruitment was the top 9 Golden Lions. Of course, the worst was the Golden Lion sect. None of the top 9 disciples were from the Golden Lion sect. However, among the eliminated cultivators, only Jin Guangxing was a King Realm cultivator. The last place in the top 10 was Jin Guangxing. On the black spaceship, Zhong Litao, Fan Wengang, and Sidohai quickly confirmed the list of participants. Zhong Litao said, "The top 9 have been decided. The next battles will be divided into 3 groups. The first in each group will fight for the top 3. Group 1, Feng Zhengtian, Zhao Yanling, Xing Liuyi. Group 2, Flowing Star Sword, Qiu Yan, Feng Xiaoxiao. Group 3, Pengju, Xianxia, Yi Xing, Zhong Litao." First went through the names of the 3 groups of the top 9. This arrangement made Star Silver Death and the other experts of Celestial Elephant Palace unhappy. This was because Yi Xing, Flowing Star Sword, and Feng Zhengtian were not in the same group. Yi Xing was in the same group as Xianxia, a disciple of the Dark Moon Palace. However, Yi Xing had defeated Jin Guangxing. Xianxia was only a mid-stage first-level Astral Sea Realm martial artist. She couldn't fight above her level, so she wasn't a match for Yi Xing. However, Zhong Litao and the other 2 naturally had their reasons for making such arrangements. They were divided into 3 groups. The winners would be in the top 3. Of course, the strongest 3 would be divided into 3 different groups. Feng Zhengtian was a 2-star king and was undoubtedly one of the strongest 3. Flowing Star Sword had the ability to fight above his level, so he was also one of the strongest 3. The remaining top 3 would be between Yi Xing and Pengju. Zhong Litao and the other 2 were quasi-gods. How could they not see that Pengju's cultivation had reached the limit of the first-level Astral Sea Realm? He was only 1 step away from becoming a 2-star king. His strength was definitely at the top of the 1-star kings. Yi Xing's performance in defeating Jin Guangxing was enough to compete with Pengju. Therefore, Yi Xing and Pengju were in the same group. Whoever won would be in the top 3. After Zhong Litao arranged the groups, he continued, Group 1, Feng Zhengtian vs. Zhao Yanling. Little Tsang, kill her if you have the chance. Quasi-god Feng Xiaoyuan transmitted a message to Feng Zhengtian. Originally, the relationship between Demon Sealing Valley and Big Dipper Sword Sect was already bad enough because of what happened in the extraterritorial Star Continent. Now, because of Yi Xing, the 2 sects were even more hostile. Now that Demon Sealing Valley's strength had increased greatly and Star Elephant Palace had a 2 Nirvana quasi-god, the 2 sects even had thoughts of annihilating Big Dipper Sword Sect. As for the Big Dipper Sword Sect's disciples, they would naturally kill them if they had the chance. They did not care about Big Dipper Sword sect's opinion at all. Yanling, admit defeat early. Don't force yourself. Emperor Vast Sky also transmitted a message to Zhao Yanling in the Big Dipper Sword sect's group. This battle naturally ended with Zhao Yanling admitting defeat. Zhao Yanling's cultivation was one level lower than Feng Cengyan's. Moreover, she was a woman. There was nothing embarrassing about admitting defeat. Since she had admitted defeat the moment she entered the arena, Feng Cengyan had no chance to kill her. After the battle ended, Zhong Litao quickly announced the second battle, Group 1, Zhao Yanling vs Xing Liuyi. Yanling, kill him if you have the chance. Almost all of the Big Dipper Sword sect's elders transmitted a message to Zhao Yanling. Star Elephant Palace's flowing star sword had killed Big Dipper Sword sect's disciple, Feng Wanyan. In the subsequent battles, the three divine envoys had deliberately avoided the battles between Star Elephant Palace and Big Dipper Sword sect's disciples. It was only now that they had the chance to take revenge. Unfortunately, Xing Liuyi was very slippery. He had also admitted defeat the moment he entered the arena, giving Zhao Yanling no chance to kill him. The third battle of the first group was naturally between Feng Cengyan and Xing Liuyi. A 2-star king versus a 9-star reverend. There was no suspense in this battle. Soon, the first candidate of the first group was determined. Feng Cengyan was the first to enter the top 3. Group 2, Star Elephant Sword vs Qiu Yan. Zhong Litao's voice rang out. The second battle of the second group immediately began. Both of them were 1-star kings. After entering the arena, neither of them admitted defeat immediately. Qiu Yan was a disciple of the Moon-Severing sect. She looked at Star Elephant Sword and said, "Star Elephant Sword, I heard that you can fight beyond your level. It is hard to find a match among the 2-star kings. However, seeing is believing. I will not admit defeat directly." As she spoke, Qiu Yan took out a long whip. Whoosh, her astrology was activated. It was the extreme water astrology. Star Elephant Sword's face was arrogant. He said indifferently, "If you don't admit defeat, I will defeat you with 1 strike." As soon as he finished speaking, Star Elephant Sword raised his hand. The sword on his back was instantly unsheathed and appeared in his hand. Meteor flash. Star Elephant Sword shouted coldly. In an instant he became one with his sword and stabbed towards Qiu Yan. Like a meteor flashing across the sky, he stabbed towards Qiu Yan in an instant. Chapter 748. It was so fast. Qiu Yan's pupils constricted and her heart skipped a beat. The sword was so fast that it almost exceeded her reaction time. She wanted to dodge and block it, but it was too late. The great danger caused Qiu Yan to circulate her astral energy to the limit. She waved her hand and a ring on her wrist flew out and attacked the sword energy. At the same time, Qiu Yan retreated quickly and dodged to the side. Not only was Flowing Star Sword fast, but it was also very agile. When the ring was thrown out, the sword energy shook and went around the ring in an instant. Puff, Qiu Yan's retreating body was unable to dodge the sword. Her outer clothes were torn and she was sent flying. She spat out a mouthful of blood. "I admit defeat." While Qiu Yan was flying backward, she saw another sword light coming at her from the front. She quickly shouted. Whoosh! The sword light disappeared instantly. Flowing Star Sword stopped and stood in the void. The pride on his face was obvious. He indeed had the right to be proud. That sword made the hearts of most of the younger martial artists tremble. So powerful! Flowing Star Sword had defeated Qiu Yan without using his astrology. If he had used his astrology, his strength would have been even more terrifying. Among the younger martial artists, even Feng Cengyan, who was a 2-star king, was very wary of Flowing Star Sword. The second group, Flowing Star Sword vs Feng Xiaoxiao. Zhong Litao quickly announced the next battle. Qiu Yan left the independent space in the center of the arena. Flowing Star Sword did not move. He looked at the Big Dipper Sword sect and licked his lips. His eyes were bloodthirsty. The elders of the Big Dipper Sword sect naturally told Feng Xiaoxiao to prioritize her safety. Feng Xiaoxiao entered the arena. Flowing Star Sword was not in a hurry to attack. He said, "Feng Xiaoxiao, everyone says that you are the most monstrous genius in the Star Moon continent in the past 10,000 years. I don't believe that. Do you have the guts to fight me to the death?" Feng Xiaoxiao laughed and said, "Flowing Star Sword, is there something wrong with your head? I am only an 8-star Reverend Lord, but you are already a Star Sea Realm King. You have the nerve to say that you want to fight me to the death?" Flowing Star Sword sneered and said, "Aren't you the #1 genius who can easily fight those who are a few levels higher? What are you afraid of now? I'm only going to ask you one question, do you dare or not?" Feng Xiaoxiao was not stupid enough to be provoked by the Flowing Star Sword. He replied bluntly, "I wouldn't dare. I'll admit defeat right now." Stellar Sword snorted coldly. He had wanted to trick Feng Xiaoxiao into fighting him to the death so that he could take the opportunity to kill Feng Xiaoxiao and eliminate a future threat. He never expected that Feng Xiaoxiao would not give him the chance to do so. In the second group, Qiu Yan and Feng Xiaoxiao had both lost to Flowing Star Sword. Naturally, the first place in the group was confirmed. Flowing Star Sword had entered the top 3. However, the battle between Qiu Yan and Feng Xiaoxiao still had to go on. Different rankings would give different rewards. 4th, 5th, and 6th place would receive different rewards from 7th to 10th place. The second place in the group would go to 4th, 5th, and 6th place. The third place in the group would go to 7th to 9th place. The specific rankings after the top 3 would not be decided through the competition, but the rankings of the different rewards would still be determined. Very soon, the third battle of the second group began. Feng Xiaoxiao fought against a 1-star king, Qiu Yan. Qiu Yan had only suffered some light injuries. She had already recovered after using a healing mystic pill. Her battle strength was not affected at all. However, even though Feng Xiaoxiao was only an 8-star supremacy, he was still very powerful. His sword techniques were not as fast as Flowing Star Swords, but they had the advantage of being ever-changing. In less than 20 moves, Qiu Yan was defeated by Feng Xiaoxiao's sword. On the black flying ship, the eyes of Zhong Li Tao and the other 2 lit up. Feng Xiaoxiao was already so powerful when he was only an 8-star supremacy. This kind of battle strength was rare even among the genius disciples of the Dark Star Temple. Moreover, Feng Xiaoxiao's destiny was a 2-star blue destiny. He would definitely become someone great in the future. It was very difficult for a 9-star blue destiny to undergo the Nirvana tribulation to become a quasi-god. It required a lot of luck. On the other hand, it was much easier for a blue-star blue destiny to undergo the Nirvana tribulation. Therefore, it was rare for a 9-star blue destiny to become a quasi-god. However, it was more common for a blue-star blue destiny to be 1 level higher than the blue destiny. For example, there were many 2-star blue destiny quasi-gods, and many 3-star blue destiny quasi-gods were 2-star blue destiny quasi-gods. This meant that after 100 or 200 years, Feng Xiaoxiao would at least be able to grow to the same level as Zhong Li Tao. If she was lucky enough, she might even become a 3rd Nirvana quasi-god. If she was lucky enough, she might even become a 4th Nirvana quasi-god. Zhong Li Tao and the other 2 naturally had a whole new level of respect for Feng Xiaoxiao. As for Yi Xing, he was a 9-star blue destiny quasi-lord. It was not bad for a 9-star supremacy to defeat a 1-star king. However, Zhong Li Tao and the other 2 only paid a little attention to him. After the first and second group's battles were over, only the third group was left. The third group, Yi Xing versus Xianxia, Zhong Li Tao quickly ordered. This was a battle without any suspense. Xianxia's strength was inferior to Jin Guangxing's. Yi Xing defeated her without using his astrology. The third group, Yi Xing versus Pengju. In the Big Dipper Sword sect, Feng Hanqiu looked at the quasi-god of the Giant Spirit sect, Lu Zhenghong, and said proudly, "Big Baldy, you should take out your supreme-grade mystic weapon first and prepare early." Ha! Lu Zhenghong's face was a little unhappy. He had calculated that none of the younger disciples in the Big Dipper Sword sect could compare to Pengju. Who would have thought that Yi Xing would be so strong? Jin Guangxing's strength was one of the strongest among 1-star kings. For Yi Xing to be able to defeat Jin Guangxing, his strength was at least at the peak of one-star kings. He wasn't any weaker than Peng Ju. In this way, the situation became uncertain. Of course, Lu Jinghong wasn't happy. However, Lu Jinghong didn't agree with Feng Hanqiu's claim that Yi Xing would win. Although he felt that the situation had been broken, Peng Ju wasn't bound to lose. In his opinion, Peng Ju still had a 50% chance of winning. At this moment, Feng Hanqiu was feeling proud. Lu Jinghong naturally wouldn't let him down. He said, "Old ghost, I think you should take out your supreme-grade mystic weapon first. After all, Yi Xing is only a 9th-star venerable lord. Even if he can contend against Peng Ju, he won't be able to last long. Therefore you will lose." Feng Hanqiu was full of confidence. "Just wait and see." While the two quasi-gods were talking, Yi Xing and Peng Ju arrived at the center of the arena. Peng Ju was 2 meters tall with inch-long hair. He was wearing a tight chainmail. His arms were bare, and his explosive muscles were fully displayed. The Giant Spirit sect was a sect that focused on cultivating the physical body. Peng Ju clearly had a very high physique and talent, which was why he could stand out among the disciples of the Giant Spirit sect. Monthly votes, any more? Chapter 749. Peng Ju stood there like an iron tower. His aura was vigorous, but there was a heavy feeling. It was as if there was an invisible pressure falling from the sky, making people feel depressed. Compared to Peng Ju's figure, Yi Xing was much slimmer, but his aura was not inferior. His figure was like a sharp sword, revealing a terrifying sharpness and penetrating aura. Peng Ju's thick and heavy invisible aura was not affected in the slightest in front of Yi Xing's sharp aura. That invisible pressure, as long as it was within 100 feet of Yi Xing, was shattered by the sharp aura without a trace. "You are indeed strong." Peng Ju carefully looked at Yi Xing for a while, and slowly said, "But I'm not weak either. In this battle, I must defeat you and get into the top 3. Peng Ju's tone changed, revealing confidence and determination. Yi Xing only smiled faintly. The dark crow bow appeared in his hand, and he said, "Make your move." Swoosh, as his voice fell, a starlight rushed out from between Yi Xing's eyebrows. Yi Xing used the fire star aspect. Although Peng Ju was confident, he did not dare to underestimate Yi Xing. He also immediately used his earth star aspect. Yellow star power fell, covering Peng Ju with a layer of light. His aura also rose and his strength multiplied. Peng Ju clenched his fists, the muscles on his arms bulging like dragons, full of explosive power. Multiple mountain god fist. Peng Ju shouted, and with a step, the earth shook. Peng Ju's body rushed forward like a cannonball, and his fist blasted towards Yi Xing. Layers of air waves broke apart, and a huge fist, from several miles away, instantly arrived in front of Yi Xing. Before the fist arrived, the wind was already blowing. Just the strength of the fist made Yi Xing feel like a mountain was crashing towards him. 9 Heavens Astral Wonder Technique. Yi Xing used the grand momentum of wind, and his body seemed to be roaming the 9 heavens. His speed was like light and shadow, and he disappeared without a trace in an instant. Boom, with a loud explosion, the earth shook. Peng Ju's fist missed, hitting empty air. Bang! Peng Ju stomped his feet on the ground, and a shockwave spread out from under his feet. His figure leaped up 10 miles, and immediately caught up with Yi Xing's figure. Then he threw out another powerful punch. While Yi Xing was dodging, he had already pulled open the black profound bow. Suddenly, the bowstring shot out. Whoosh! A ripple of starlight burst out and spread forward in a fan shape. There was a faint layer of flame on the starlight ripple. Not only was it incomparably sharp, its power was also very terrifying. In less than half a blink of an eye, the starlight ripple and Peng Ju's fist fiercely collided. Peng Ju's body was protected by the earth star power. His fist was not only powerful in attack, but also in defense. He didn't pay much attention to the starlight ripples that Yi Xing suddenly shot out. He thought that his powerful fist was enough to shatter it. However, when the starlight ripples collided with the fist force, Peng Ju's eye was shocked. He saw that the fist force that was like a collapsing mountain was actually cut open by the starlight ripples. It was as if a divine weapon had cut open steel, and it made a sharp sound. The starlight ripples broke through the fist force and rushed to the front of Pengju. It directly collided with Pengju's fist before it was blocked by Pengju. Pengju was wearing a black-level upper-grade glove. Although the starlight ripples were sharp, they couldn't cut open a black-level upper-grade weapon. However, while a black-level upper-grade weapon could block the sharpness of the starlight ripples, it couldn't be dissolved by the terrifying power. It could only rely on one's own strength to withstand it. The power contained in the starlight ripples rushed up one after another. Pengju's fist broke through more than 10 layers of power. Then the momentum stopped. The power of the starlight ripples lasted for a long time. The terrifying power continued to rush forward, and Pengju's body was pushed back instead of moving forward. When the power of the starlight ripples was exhausted, Pengju's body was pushed back by more than 1,000 meters. Although he wasn't injured, Pengju was shocked. The power of Yixing's archery was far beyond his expectations. Just a starlight ripple that was shot out in a hurry was already so powerful. If a complete arrow was shot out, how powerful would it be? Before Pengju could figure it out, he immediately faced Yixing's complete arrow attack. When Pengju was pushed back by the starlight ripples, Yixing drew his bow again. At the same time, his body flashed to the back. In the blink of an eye, he appeared more than 10 miles away. When Pengju completely blocked the starlight ripples, in the distance, Yixing had already drawn the black profound bow into a full moon. A burning starlight arrow was condensed and formed. Pengju could feel the terrifying power in the starlight arrow. He knew that if he waited for the arrow to be shot over, he wouldn't be able to block it and would lose this battle. "I can't let him shoot this arrow," Pengju shouted in his heart. The astral energy in his body was circulated to the limit, and his aura surged. Whoosh! Pengju's feet touched the ground. His body was like an arrow that left the bow, rushing towards Yixing. He wanted to shatter this arrow in Yixing's hands. His figure moved and his fist punched out. The terrifying fist force caused the void in front of him to cave in, forming a fist shadow that was visible to the naked eye. It was like a small mountain that instantly arrived in front of Yixing facing this terrifying fist. Yixing's lips curled up. The starlight arrow on the black profound bow had already left the bowstring. The arrow carried with it a terrifying flame and revealed an extremely hot aura. Because of the heat, even the air was exploding. Compared to the starlight ripples, the power of this arrow was more than 10 times greater. As the starlight arrow left the bowstring, it collided with the giant fist shadow formed by the fist force. The fist shadow was like a balloon that was pierced by the starlight arrow and shattered into pieces. The starlight arrow shot forward without slowing down. In less than half a blink of an eye, it collided with Pengju's fist. Bang! A blast of air instantly exploded in all directions, making a loud noise that shook the heavens and earth. In the midst of the explosion, Pengju's expression instantly turned into horror. He felt the power of the starlight arrow in front of his fist strike like a heavy hammer. In an instant, it had penetrated the black weapon glove. With his inner eye, he could see a layer of fluctuation rushing through Pengju's arm. In an instant, the skin and flesh on Pengju's arm ruptured and blood flowed out. When the layer of fluctuation rushed to Pengju's shoulder, Pengju let out a miserable groan. He completely lost his resistance and his body flew backwards like a cannonball. He had already vomited blood in the air. Although the starlight arrow did not penetrate the upper-grade black weapon glove, it hit the glove tightly. Pengju's body was pushed back dozens of miles before its power was exhausted and it disappeared. The spectating ancient martial art practitioners looked at Pengju's figure that was pushed back. They were all shocked. Some of the younger ancient martial art practitioners were even dumbfounded. The power of Yixing's arrow was actually so powerful that it exceeded the expectations of the ancient martial art practitioners. It was unbelievable. "I admit defeat." Pengju fell to the ground and quickly admitted defeat. He did not dare to receive such an arrow a second time. Chapter 750. The entire arena was silent. Even though the Big Dipper Sword sect martial artists had expected Yi Xing to win, they didn't think that Yi Xing would win so cleanly. The power of that arrow was too shocking. Even the 3 divine messengers in the black flying ship had changed their opinion of Yi Xing previously. The 3 divine messengers had only paid some attention to Yi Xing. Now Yi Xing was like Feng Xiaoxiao in their eyes. They had a whole new level of respect for him. From Yi Xing's stunning arrow, they could tell that Yi Xing's strength had far surpassed that of a 1-star king. He had reached the level of a 2-star king. Moreover, even among 2-star kings, Yi Xing's strength was considered high. Peng Ju's strength was already at the peak of a 1-star king's. An ordinary 2-star king wouldn't be able to beat Peng Ju to such a sorry state in a head-on battle. Although Yi Xing had impressed the 3 divine messengers, in terms of importance, he wasn't as important as Feng Xiaoxiao. Feng Xiaoxiao had defeated a 1-star king when she was an 8-star supremacy. Unless Yi Xing could defeat a 2-star king, the 3 divine messengers would think that he was on the same level as Feng Xiaoxiao. In the 3rd group, Yi Xing won 2 matches in a row. He was first in the group and entered the top 3. At this point, the top 3 had been decided. The first group was Feng Cangtian, the second group was Flowing Star Sword, and the 3rd group was Yi Xing. The rewards for the top 3 were 1 grade, while the 2nd and 3rd grades were another. Who would take first place would depend on the following matches. However, in the eyes of most martial artists, the first place belonged to Flowing Star Sword. After all, Flowing Star Sword had defeated a 2-star king more than once. His strength was at the peak of the 2-star king level. In the eyes of the martial artists, Yi Xing's strength wasn't low among the 2-star kings. He should be able to compete with Feng Cangtian, but he was still lacking compared to Flowing Star Sword. Big Baldy, how do you feel now? Hand over the supreme grade mystic weapon, Hya. When Yi Xing returned to the Big Dipper Sword sects group, Feng Hanqiu looked at the Great Spirit sects Lu Zhenghong and laughed. It was obvious that Feng Hanqiu was very happy. Although Lu Zhenghong was displeased, he wasn't angry. He took out a pair of supreme-grade profound weapon gloves and threw them at Feng Hanqiu. Then, Lu Zhenghong glanced at Yi Xing and sighed. Old geezer, your Big Dipper Sword sect is really lucky to have picked up such a treasure. Why doesn't my Great Spirit sect have the same luck? God really doesn't have eyes. Feng Hanqiu took the gloves and chuckled at Lu Zhenghong. Then, he threw the gloves to Yi Xing and said, Yi Xing, these gloves are yours. Yi Xing accepted it and said, how can I accept this? Feng Hanqiu waved his hand and said, if you enter the top 3, our sect will get more than 1 supreme-grade mystic weapon as a reward. If you can get first place, we will only give you 1 supreme-grade mystic weapon. Don't decline. Yi Xing thought about it and agreed. He put away the gloves and nodded at Feng Hanqiu. He was determined to get first place for the Big Dipper Sword sect. At this time, the other quasi-god of the Big Dipper Sword sect, Feng Junyue, asked, Yi Xing, I see that you are using a middle-grade mystic weapon. It seems that you don't have a supreme-grade mystic bow? Yi Xing nodded. Feng Junyue raised his hand and a crimson bow appeared in his hand. He said, this bow is called Crimson Flame. It is a supreme-grade mystic weapon with the fire attribute. It is very compatible with you. If I give it to you, you will be like a tiger that has grown wings. It will increase your chances of getting first place. As he spoke, Feng Junyue handed the Crimson Flame bow to Yi Xing. Although the value of the Crimson Flame bow wasn't comparable to the pair of supreme-grade profound gloves, Yi Xing clearly liked the Crimson Flame bow more. A supreme-grade mystic weapon was too high-end for Yi Xing. It used up a lot of astral energy. Moreover, Yi Xing specialized in archery. His main weapon was the bow. Only the bow could increase his strength the most. If the Black Crow bow in his hand was replaced with the Crimson Flame bow, Yi Xing's strength would increase by a small level. It would be more secure for him to get first place. Thank you, Senior, for the bow. Yi Xing thanked Feng Junyue. As for getting first place, Yi Xing did not say anything. He would let the truth speak for itself later. Feng Junyue nodded with anticipation in his eyes. He said, quickly refine it. You will be able to use it in the next battle. Not long after a short treatment, Pengju and Xianxia started the third battle of the third group. The result was naturally Pengju's victory. He was ranked second, and the sect would be able to get 4th to 6th place rewards. Feng Junue had already erased his spiritual imprint in the Crimson Flame Bao, so it was easy for Yi Xing to refine it. When the battle between Pengju and Xianxia ended, Yi Xing had already refined the Crimson Flame Bao and made it his personal weapon. Until now, only the first place was left in this competition. Although most of the martial artists thought that Flowing Star Sword would get first place, they were still looking forward to the following battles. Fighting above one's level would always attract the interest of all the martial artists. The harder it was to fight above one's level, the more interested the martial artists would be. Yi Xing was only a 9-star supremacy. In the following battles, he would be fighting against 2 2-star kings. It was rare to see a battle above one's level in the Starry Crescent Land in tens of thousands of years. It was a great fortune to be able to witness such a battle. The martial artists were naturally very interested in the battle between Yi Xing, Feng Zongtian, and Flowing Star Sword. On the black spaceship, Zhong Litao had already arranged the order of the top 3. He said, "The next battle will determine the first place. The first battle will be between Feng Zongtian and Yi Xing." Many of the martial artists were excited. The first battle was between a 9-star supremacy and a 2-star king. Such a battle was very exciting. "Little Tsong, do your best to kill Yi Xing." Feng Xiaoyuan, a quasi-god from Demon Ceiling Valley, sent a voice transmission to Feng Zongtian and gave the order. In the Big Dipper Sword sect, Feng Xiaoxiao was already a big problem. Now, there was another Yi Xing. If both of them were to grow, the Big Dipper Sword sect would immediately turn the tables and surpass Demon Ceiling Valley and even Star Elephant Palace. They would become the top force in the Starry Crescent Land. Now that Demon Ceiling Valley and the Big Dipper Sword sect were enemies, Feng Xiaoyuan naturally did not want the Big Dipper Sword sect to turn the tables. Some of the future threats should be eliminated as soon as possible. Yi Xing and Feng Zongtian entered the independent space in the middle of the arena at the same time. Whoosh! Once Feng Zongtian entered the arena, he used his astrology. It was an extreme water-type astrology. When the astrology appeared, Feng Zongtian shouted, "Demon Ceiling Print." Feng Zongtian's hands changed and he pushed towards Yi Xing. In an instant, a huge word seal appeared and pressed down on Yi Xing. "Explode at 6 tomorrow. There is still one more day to double the monthly votes. Do you have any more monthly votes?" Chapter 751. This word seal was very complicated and it was not written in the current era. It should be in ancient language. In a battle, attacks from weapons such as swords, sabers, fists and arrows were more common. It was rare to see someone using a word seal to attack. However, Yi Xing had seen the skills of the Demon Ceiling Valley's disciples in the extraterritorial Starland. He had also fought with the Demon Ceiling Valley's disciples. Hence, he was familiar with the word seal. Yi Xing could feel the terrifying power contained in the word seal. This power was not sharp and did not have a strong attacking power. However, it had a strong restraining power. Once it landed on the body, it would be like an invisible shackle that would bind the person and greatly weaken the target's power. The high-grade dark bow, red flame bow, instantly appeared in his hands. Swoosh! Starlight shot up to the sky and Yi Xing immediately used the flame astral form. He pulled the bowstring and there was a loud sound. A red starlight ripple shot out and before the huge word seal could land, it was cut in half by the starlight ripple. It lost all its power and disappeared without a trace. What a strong power! A high-grade dark bow is indeed extraordinary. Yi Xing was overjoyed. Yi Xing's senses were very sensitive and he knew that the word seal was powerful. If he had used the dark bow, he might not have been able to break the word seal easily with just the starlight ripple. However, when he used the red flame bow, the starlight ripple easily cut the word seal into half. The red flame bow was made from fire-based materials and it was very compatible with Yi Xing's flame astral form and fire force. When he used it, it was naturally powerful. Shock filled Feng Zongtian's face. Evidently, he had not expected his demon's seal to be broken so easily. He had attacked as soon as he entered the arena. His goal was to attack quickly and not let Yixing have a chance to shoot. He wanted to kill Yixing quickly. With the speed of the word seal, Yixing did not have time to shoot an arrow. However, when he pulled the bowstring and shot out a starlight ripple, it was extremely fast. In Feng Tsangtian's estimation, Yixing's starlight ripples wouldn't be able to break through his demon sealing rune. Now that he had miscalculated, his quick attack naturally lost its effect. He was very frustrated. "Demon sealing 3 mountains seal," shouted Feng Tsangtian. His hand seals were constantly changing, and in an instant, 3 ancient characters appeared in the air. These 3 ancient character seals were exactly the same. Although Yixing didn't know this ancient character, he could still recognize that these 3 characters were all mountain characters. This was because the characters were like mountains. Moreover, each character seal had an illusory image of a mountain peak, which matched perfectly with the character seals. The 3 mountain characters were like 3 huge mountains falling down, forming a character that pressed down on Yixing. Yixing could feel how heavy these 3 mountains were. If he were to be pressed down by them, he would not be able to move for even 1 breath of time. And in a battle between king-level warriors, 1 breath of time was enough to determine the winner, or even life and death. Bang, bang, bang. Yixing exploded with a terrifying flame aura. The crimson flame bow in his hand bloomed with crimson flames. As Yixing's figure moved, he continuously pulled the bowstring. 3 starlight ripples shot out in the blink of an eye. The 3 illusory mountain peaks were all sliced apart, and the 3 mountain characters were also cut in half. Feng Tsangtian's demon sealing rune was broken by Yixing once again. With the crimson flame bow in hand, Yixing dealt with Feng Tsangtian's attacks with ease. Demon sealing 5 elements seal. The aura within Feng Tsangtian's body surged as his hand's seals changed, displaying an even more powerful demon sealing rune. The demon sealing 5 elements seal was already an extremely high-level secret technique of the demon sealing rune. It wasn't easy for a low-level king to use it. Feng Tsangtian was using it forcefully, determined to seal Yixing. The martial artists of the demon sealing valley didn't have high battle strength, and their martial arts weren't outstanding. Only the demon sealing rune was feared. When they fought with their enemies, they would first use the demon sealing rune to seal their targets before killing them easily. The martial artists of the demon sealing valley were basically able to seal martial artists of the same strength as them. Therefore, when martial artists of the same strength fought, the demon sealing valley's martial artists would usually win. If they encountered an opponent that the demon sealing rune couldn't seal, then it was obvious that the opponent's strength was higher than theirs. Feng Tsangtian burned a portion of his astral energy to forcefully display the demon sealing 5 elements seal. His eyes flashed with a ruthless light. He didn't believe that Yixing could even break the demon sealing 5 elements seal. As long as Yixing was sealed by the demon sealing 5 elements seal, he would have enough time to kill Yixing. Facing the attack of the 5 ancient rune seals, Yixing's eyes narrowed. He could feel the power of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth from the 5 ancient rune seals. The power of the 5 elements combined was shocking. Wuxia used the 9 Heavens Gods Wander technique and retreated quickly to increase the distance between them and buy time. At the same time, Yixing used the Dark Force and Wind Force. The Crimson Flame bow not only had fire energy gathered, but there was also a large amount of dark energy, causing the flames to turn black. The large amount of wind energy gathered helped the flames grow stronger, causing the black flames on the crimson flame bow to increase in power. Dark Wind Fire Arrow Technique. Yixing used the ultimate archery technique that he comprehended from the Black Tortoise Jade Wall. With the crimson flame bow in his hands, the power of the crimson flame bow multiplied. Boom 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 in an instant, Yixing drew the bow 3 times in a row and 3 layers of black flame ripples shot out. The first layer of black flame ripples hit the 5 ancient rune seals, causing the 5 ancient rune seals to tremble and stop their attack. The second layer of black flame ripples continued to rush forward, and the 5 ancient rune seals were instantly reduced to ashes. The third layer of black flame ripples rushed forward like a hot knife through butter, attacking Feng Zhengqian. Feng Zhengqian's expression changed and he shouted, "Suppress!" An ancient rune seal appeared and covered Feng Zhengqian's body. The demon sealing seal technique had both offensive and defensive runes. Feng Zhengqian's rune seal's defense was very strong. When the black flame ripples hit it, it only created a small ripple and Feng Zhengqian was unharmed. In the blink of an eye, the black flame ripples had exhausted its power and still could not break Feng Zhengqian's defense. However, Feng Zhengqian's heart suddenly tightened. In the distance, Yi Xing had already retreated dozens of miles away. He drew the crimson flame bow and condensed a flame arrow. Yi Xing dispersed the dark wind fire arrow technique and only used the power of the flames to perform this archery technique. Its power was equally shocking. Whoosh! The arrow left the bow instantly and shot out like a flash of light towards Feng Zhengqian's throat. Shield! Feng Zhengqian felt the terrifying power of the arrow and his heart trembled. He formed another seal and performed another defensive rune seal. Boom! The flaming arrow instantly hit the shield seal technique and made an explosive sound. Feng Zhengqian felt a terrifying force rushing towards him and his body retreated a few steps. A large number of cracks appeared on the shield seal outside his body. There were only 4 hours left to double the votes. Today, there must be a 6th watch for you. Please double the monthly votes. Chapter 752. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. With 3 loud sounds, Yi Xing formed 3 flaming arrows at the same time and shot them at Feng Zhengqian. The 3 flaming arrows formed a line and shot out dozens of miles in an instant, hitting the shield seal outside Feng Zhengqian's body. The defense formed by the shield seal was instantly shattered. Following that, the defense of the suppress seal also cracked in an instant. Feng Zhengqian felt the 3 forces rushing at him. He immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and his body flew backward as if he had suffered a heavy blow. At this moment, Yi Xing had already drawn the crimson flame bow and formed a flaming arrow. Swoosh! The arrow pierced through the air and shot toward Feng Zhengqian. This arrow was aimed at Feng Zhengqian's head and wanted to kill him in one shot. The martial artists from Demon Sealing Valley were shocked. The 2 quasi-gods instantly released a terrifying aura and shouted angrily, "How dare you! I admit defeat!" At the same time, Feng Zhengqian also shouted, his voice filled with fear. Yi Xing did not care about the threat of the quasi-gods from Demon Sealing Valley. However, since Feng Zhengqian had admitted defeat, Yi Xing could not kill him just like that. With a thought, the flaming arrow that was as fast as lightning suddenly stopped in the void. At this moment, the flaming arrow was less than a meter away from Feng Zhengqian's head. Feng Zhengqian looked at the flaming arrow in front of him, and his heart trembled with fear. "I admit defeat, I admit defeat." Feng Zhengqian was afraid that Yi Xing would control the arrow and continue to shoot at him, so he shouted again. With a thought from Yi Xing, the flaming arrow instantly dissipated. Feng Zhengqian finally heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, he realized that he was already sweating profusely. On the black spaceship, Zhong Li Tao and the other 2 divine messengers looked at Yi Xing with sparkling eyes. Yi Xing's position in their hearts had risen again. He was now on the same level as Feng Xiaoxiao. Yi Xing and Feng Xiaoxiao had both defeated kings who were 2 levels higher than them. Such combat strength would continue after they became kings. If they could become quasi-gods in the future, they might even be able to fight against kings who were 2 levels higher than them. Their strength would be shocking. At that time, Yi Xing and Feng Xiaoxiao might be even stronger than Zhong Li Tao and the other 2 divine messengers. Of course, they would view Yi and Feng Xiaoxiao in a new light. Zhong Li Tao said, "The first battle is won by Yi Xing. After 15 minutes of rest, he will fight the second battle with flowing star sword." Because the rewards for the 2nd and 3rd places were the same, there was no need to separate them. As long as the 1st place was determined, the winner of the 2nd battle would be the 1st. When Yi Xing returned to the Big Dipper Sword sects group, the Big Dipper Sword sects disciples were all overjoyed. The Big Dipper Sword sects results in the Dark Star Divine Palace's recruitment had been poor for many years. Now that Yi Xing had defeated a 2-star king, Feng Zhengtian, it was clear that he had the strength to compete with Star Sword for first place. The martial artists of the Big Dipper Sword sect were naturally confident in Yi Xing. Feng Zhengtian returned to Demon Ceiling Valley's team with his head lowered. He was a 2-star king, but he was defeated by a 9-star supremacy in front of everyone. At that moment of life and death, he didn't feel anything when he screamed at Yi Xing to admit defeat. Now that he had calmed down, he felt that he had lost all face. This little bastard is actually so strong. Demon Ceiling Valley's quasi-god, Feng Xiaoyuan, snorted in his heart. He didn't feel good at all. Feng Xiaoyuan transmitted his voice to Xing Qingji. Brother Xing, if we don't get rid of this kid, he will be as dangerous as Feng Xiaoxiao. Next, we'll have to rely on the performance of your Celestial Elephant Palace's disciple, Star Sword. Xing Qingji's expression was calm as he said to Feng Xiaoyuan telepathically, "It's not difficult to defeat him with the flowing Star Sword, but it's not easy to kill him. If this kid is determined to stay alive, he'll have the chance to admit defeat no matter what. As for killing him, let's wait until he goes to the Dark Star Divine Palace. He's just entered the Dark Star Divine Palace and is only an outer sect disciple. There are still cultivators from our 3 sects left in the Dark Star Divine Palace." Feng Xiaoyuan thought about it and replied, "All right, let's wait until he goes to the Dark Star Temple to kill him." After Xing Qingji finished communicating with Feng Xiaoyuan, he transmitted his voice to Star Sword. "Star Sword, Yi Xing's forte is archery. If you let him shoot his arrows, it will be difficult for you to defeat him. However, as long as you can prevent him from shooting his arrows, with your strength, it will be more than enough to defeat him. You have to play to your strengths. As long as you are fast enough, he won't have any chance to fight back." 15 minutes passed quickly, and Yi Xing finished his rest. The last battle of the competition finally began. Yi Xing and Star Sword both entered the independent space in the center of the arena. All around them, all the martial artists were on high alert. Previously, the majority of martial artists had thought that there was no doubt that the first place belonged to the flowing Star Sword. However, after Yi Xing defeated the 2-star king, Feng Zhengtian, many martial artists' confidence in the flowing Star Sword was shaken. Who would be the victor of this battle? Who would be the champion of this competition? Other than a few martial artists who still believed that it would be Star Sword, most of the martial artists were already confused. However, the more they couldn't guess, the more it aroused the martial artists' interest. They all stared at Yi Xing and Star Sword, afraid that they would miss a moment. After the two entered the arena, Star Sword originally planned to use Feng Zhengtian's method to attack Yi Xing quickly. However, Yi Xing raised his hand and stopped Star Sword's action. Yi Xing said, "Star Sword, do you dare to have a battle of life and death with me?" In the competition, Star Sword had killed the Big Dipper Sword sect's disciple, Feng Wanyan. At that time, Yi Xing already had the intention to kill Star Sword. If there was a chance, he would not let it go. However, even Feng Zhengtian had the chance to admit defeat in Yi Xing's hands. Yi Xing was very clear that defeating Star Sword might not be a problem, but there was probably no chance of killing him. No matter what, Star Sword would still have the chance to admit defeat. Therefore, Yi Xing was not in a hurry to fight with Star Sword. Instead, he wanted to make an agreement with Star Sword to have a battle of life and death. As long as Star Sword agreed, even if he admitted defeat, it would be useless. Yi Xing could still kill him legitimately. Yi Xing's gaze was sharp as he looked directly at Star Sword. He continued, "There is no victory or defeat in this battle of ours. There is only life and death. Star Sword, do you dare?" Yi Xing's words shocked all the martial artists. Clearly, they did not expect that Yi Xing would actually issue a battle of life and death with Star Sword. Even the martial artists of Celestial Elephant Palace did not expect it. However, after the initial shock, the martial artists of Celestial Elephant Palace revealed excited expressions. Xing Qingji thought to himself, "Boy, you are not taking the path to heaven but barging into hell with no door. You are seeking your own death." Xing Qingji thought that he had seen through Yi Xing's weakness, which was that his speed was not fast enough. Therefore, he was certain that Star Sword could rely on his speed to win against Yi Xing. In Xing Qingji's opinion, if Yi Xing and Star Sword were to have a battle of life and death, the person who would die would naturally be Yi Xing. Chapter 754. Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, Yi Xing had already pulled the bowstring 3 times in a row. The speed of the flowing star sword was too fast. It was too late to condense the arrow and shoot it. However, shooting out the starlight ripples was only a matter of seconds. A slight gap was enough. 3 layers of black flame ripples rushed out from the Wuxuan bow, one layer after another. This was the strongest attack that Yi Xing could achieve when shooting out the starlight ripples. The first layer of black flame ripples was instantly broken by the sword light, and then the second layer. When the flowing star sword broke the first layer of black flame ripples, its momentum had already been stopped. The speed of breaking the second layer immediately slowed down. Kill! The flowing star sword roared angrily. Starlight burst out and thunder rumbled. The treasured sword in his hand suddenly bloomed with light, and its power skyrocketed. Break, break. The second and third layers of black flame ripples were broken in the blink of an eye. After breaking through the 3 layers of black flame ripples, the flowing star sword's sword power weakened from strong to weak, and then it became strong again. Although it didn't take much time, Yi Xing had already left his original position and appeared in a farther place. Bang bang bang, 3 powerful sounds were heard in one breath. In less than half a blink of an eye, another 3 layers of black flame ripples burst out and shot towards the flowing star sword from another direction. The flowing star sword power locked onto Yi Xing's figure. Yi Xing's body moved. He naturally knew that and wanted to continue the chase. However, the 3 layers of black flame ripples burst out and forced the flowing star sword to block them. In this way, the flowing star sword's time was greatly delayed. When the flowing star sword broke through the second 3 layers of black flame ripples, Yi Xing changed his position again. He was already dozens of miles away from the flowing star sword. This time, Yi Xing didn't rush to shoot the black flame ripples. Instead, he pulled the red flame bow fiercely. Yi Xing bent his body and lowered his center of gravity. He exerted all his strength, but still couldn't pull the red flame bow into a full moon. However, Yi Xing could feel the terrifying power contained in the red flame bow. In the blink of an eye, a black flame arrow was formed on the crimson flame bow. Against the flowing star sword, other than the Black Hole constellation and Sagittarius constellation, Yi Xing's other abilities were naturally unleashed to the limit. He continued to use the Dark Wind Fire Arrow incantation to attack the flowing star sword with the strongest arrow. Thunder Flash. The Stellar Stream Sword's senses were very sensitive. He was a little shaken by the black flame arrow that appeared on the crimson flame bow. He immediately used one of the ultimate moves of the meteor lightning. Rumble. The sound of thunder exploded, and the thunder celestial manifestation poured down the surging power of thunder. The flowing star sword pierced out, bringing along a resplendent electric light. Like a dancing electric snake, its power was earth-shattering. Whoosh! Yi Xing's pupils constricted. The black flame arrow had already taken shape. Its might had reached the limit as it shot towards the flowing star sword. The black flame arrow and the electric sword aura were both as fast as lightning. In less than half a blink of an eye, they collided. The black aura surged in all directions, and the electric current was like a whip that splashed in all directions. A terrifying blast of air exploded outwards, drowning an area of 10 miles. Whether it was the black flame arrow or the electric sword aura, their power was too terrifying. This huge collision stunned all the martial artists. The blast of air billowed, making it impossible for people to see the scene inside. But what they could see was that Yi Xing had once again drawn the crimson flame bow. In the blink of an eye, another black flame arrow was formed. And in this blink of an eye, the flowing star sword didn't come out of the area where the blast of air billowed. It was obvious that the flowing star sword didn't have the upper hand in the collision just now. Whoosh! The condensed black flame arrow left the bowstring in an instant. The void in front of it was suddenly pierced through, and the surging power caused the blast of air to billow. Although the current situation of the flowing star sword couldn't be seen, the martial artists of the Big Dipper Sword sect revealed looks of joy. But the martial artists of the Astral Elephant Palace frowned slightly. Yi Xing had already shot out his second arrow, but the flowing star sword didn't take the initiative to launch a second attack at Yi Xing. This was clearly a sign that the flowing star sword was at a disadvantage. Just as the second black flame arrow shot into the area where the blast of air billowed, a dazzling electric light suddenly danced out, and the figure of the flowing star sword appeared. The treasure sword in the flowing star sword's hand carried a dazzling electric light as it ruthlessly attacked the black flame arrow. There was another explosion. Astral light exploded, and the blast of air billowed out in all directions. The flowing star sword's body suddenly shook, and he retreated 100 meters in the air. And in the distance, Yi Xing's expression was as usual. He drew the crimson flame bow and condensed another black flame arrow. In this current situation, even the martial artists of the younger generation could see that Yi Xing had the advantage, and the situation wasn't looking good for the flowing star sword. Whoosh! The black flame arrow broke through the air, and with a terrifying power, it once again shot towards the flowing star sword. The flowing star sword was repelled 100 meters back, but his expression was still calm. The arrow shot by Yi Xing was indeed powerful, but his strength was not bad, and his speed was also fast. Even if he was at a disadvantage, he could still resist. The treasure sword in the flowing star sword's hand bloomed with dazzling electric light. Just as he was about to swing his sword, his expression suddenly changed. He saw that after the black flame arrow was shot out, it suddenly changed direction. The flowing star sword's attention was immediately locked on the black flame arrow, and the treasure sword in his hand also moved according to the direction of the arrow. In the blink of an eye, the black flame arrow changed direction 9 times, and then from a tricky angle, it burst towards the flowing star sword's head. Break! The flowing star sword's reaction was extremely sensitive. The black flame arrow changed direction 9 times, but he still accurately judged the final attack trajectory and slashed out with his sword. Boom! The terrifying power collided. The black flame arrow was cut in half by the flowing star sword and turned into black flames that splashed in all directions. It's time to end this! In the distance, Yi Xing's cold shout came. This time, the flowing star sword's defense against the arrow attack of the 9 changes of the mind lasted the longest time. Yi Xing pulled the red flame bow and condensed 3 black flame arrows. Bush, bush, bush. At the same time as Yi Xing's voice came, 3 black flame arrows came. The 3 black flame arrows changed direction in the void, and the flowing star sword's face suddenly turned pale. 1 black flame arrow could change direction 9 times and he could still accurately block it. 2 black flame arrows were already very difficult for him, let alone 3 black flame arrows. He had no hope of blocking them at all. It's over! The flowing star sword was greatly frightened. At this moment, the flowing star sword withdrew his sword momentum and no longer paid attention to any of the black flame arrows. Instead, he performed a defensive sword technique, and his body was impenetrable from all directions. Every time the flowing star sword swung his sword, there was a surge of electric light, and the surging thunderbolt star force fell unceasingly. The flowing star sword condensed the thunderbolt star force into a thunderbolt star ball. Boom, boom, boom. The 3 black flame arrows all hit the thunderbolt star ball, and 3 terrifying explosions sounded at the same time. Chapter 755. The defensive power of the Thunderball was indeed strong. Even a top 2-star king would find it hard to break through. However, the penetrative power of the black flame arrows was also extremely terrifying. The 3 black flame arrows shot into the astral lightning sphere, and then the power contained within them exploded, causing great damage to the astral lightning sphere. Amidst the explosion, the Thunderball was riddled with holes and flew backwards. The figure of flowing star sword was revealed, and he was in a sorry state. However, the power of the 3 black flame arrows was blocked by the thunderbolt ball in the end, and the Starstream sword was not injured. If it was a normal battle, Flowing Star Sword would have admitted defeat and ended the battle. Unfortunately, this was a battle of life and death. There was no winner or loser. The battle would only end when one side died. Whoosh! Yixing shot out another arrow. The black flame arrow instantly shot a hole in the void and arrived in front of Flowing Star Sword. Flowing Star Sword was hit by the previous 3 black flame arrows and his defense collapsed. How could he block the attack of this black flame arrow? The black flame arrow grew bigger and bigger in Flowing Star Sword's eyes. Flowing Star Sword's expression turned into horror and he shouted, "I admit defeat." At the same time, he forcefully activated the star shield and retreated. After Feng Tsangtian admitted defeat, Yixing spared his life. Flowing Star Sword also admitted defeat now. However, the outcome was different. Yixing did not hesitate and the black flame arrow did not stop as it shot forward. Flowing Star Sword's star shield was destroyed as if it was in vain. The black flame arrow shot directly into Flowing Star Sword's head. Boom! A terrifying power exploded and blew a fist-sized hole in Flowing Star Sword's head. Flowing Star Sword let out a scream and died instantly. His body fell to the ground and blood and brain matter flowed out. This outcome was out of the expectations of many martial artists. They widened their eyes and looked at Flowing Star Sword's corpse in disbelief. Flowing Star Sword was known as the most powerful martial artist in Starry Crescent Land under the age of 35. However, he died in the hands of a master who was not even a martial king. Some martial artists naturally could not accept this outcome. The martial artists from Star Elephant Palace released a terrifying aura and looked furious. Before the battle began, they thought Yixing would definitely die. However, the truth was that Flowing Star Sword was killed by Yixing. He died right in front of their eyes. Yixing kept Flowing Star Sword's upper-grade dark weapon sword and storage ring, carrying Flowing Star Sword's corpse and left the standalone space. After that, Yixing flung Starflow Sword's corpse, throwing it towards the Celestial Elephant Palace martial artist. Flowing Star Sword's corpse fell in front of Star Elephant Palace's team. This action greatly infuriated the martial artists from Star Elephant Palace. They looked at Flowing Star Sword's corpse and then looked at Yixing. Their eyes were about to spit fire. Even in the face of the emperors, great emperors, and quasi-gods from Star Elephant Palace, Yixing did not show any weakness. His sharp gaze swept over them. Yixing said indifferently, "This is the end of arrogant people. One day, I will return to Starry Crescent Land. If Star Elephant Palace does not restrain themselves, Flowing Star Sword will be your example." Among the martial artists from Star Elephant Palace, there were quasi-gods, great emperors and emperors. All of them were trembling with anger. They glared at Yixing viciously. They could not wait to tear Yixing into pieces. However, Yixing was already first in the competition. He was a genius disciple of the Dark Star Temple. With the 3 divine envoys watching, they would not dare to do anything to Yixing even if they were given 100 guts. After Yixing finished speaking, he returned to the Big Dipper Sword Sect's team. All the martial artists from the Big Dipper Sword sect gave Yixing a thumbs up. They were very happy. On the black flying ship, Zhong Litao said, "Due to the death of someone, there is a change in the name of the competition this time. There is a vacancy in the top 3 and it will be replaced by the strongest of the 4th, 5th, and 6th places. Then, the strongest of the 7th to 9th places will replace the vacancy in the 4th, 5th, and 6th places. Among the eliminated martial artists, there will be an extra slot. When the total number of people is 10, they will become disciples of the Dark Star Temple." When Zhong Litao said this, the eyes of many martial artists from the younger generation lit up. The 4th, 5th, and 6th place martial artists would have a chance to fight for the top 3. The 7th, 8th, and 9th place martial artists would have a chance to fight for the top 6. The eliminated martial artists would have an extra slot to become disciples of the Dark Star Temple. Due to the death of the Flowing Star Sword, there were suddenly a few more opportunities. Of course, the younger martial artists' spirits were lifted. All of this had nothing to do with Yixing. He returned to the Big Dipper Sword Sects team and started chatting with the quasi-gods Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junue. Feng Hanqiu and Feng Junue expressed their gratitude to Yixing. Yixing had won first place, so the Big Dipper Sword Sect would receive a generous reward from the Dark Star Temple. Yixing did not say much about this. Instead, he asked about the Dark Star Temple. He was about to set off for the Dark Star continent and become a disciple of the Dark Star Temple. However, Yixing was very unfamiliar with the Dark Star continent and the Dark Star Temple. He only knew a little about it from the notes of the founder of the Dark Star sect, Zhuangyuan. Feng Junue had just returned from the Dark Star Temple. Regarding the Dark Star Temple, he explained everything to Yixing in detail. Feng Junue said, "The Dark Star Temple is a top-notch 5-star power. Just like how the Big Dipper Sword Sect managed their territory and established the Big Dipper dynasty, the Dark Star Temple also established a political regime known as the Dark Star God Kingdom, ruling over the entire Dark Star continent. However, the difference is that the Big Dipper dynasty is only a vassal of the Big Dipper Sword Sect. On the Dark Star continent, the Dark Star God Kingdom is the dominant force. The Dark Star Temple is only a vassal of the Dark Star God Kingdom. The Dark Star Temple exists to strengthen the rule of the Dark Star God Kingdom. The Dark Star continent is a high-class continent with countless powerful martial artists. As the strongest sect on the Dark Star continent, the Dark Star Temple naturally has a large number of disciples. In the Dark Star Temple, anyone below 1,000 years old is a disciple. Above 1,000 years old, quasi-gods are deacons, and true gods are elders. Among the disciples, those below mid-level king level are outer sect disciples. 4-star king level and above are inner sect disciples. Quasi-gods and above are core disciples. Core disciples will be taken in by true gods as personal disciples. True gods, Yixing was excited. He asked, "Senior, you're a quasi-god. Are you also a personal disciple of a true god?" Feng Junue nodded slightly and said, "My master is the 7th elder of the Dark Star Temple, Mo Yuanshan. He's a powerful true god, but..." Feng Junue could tell that Yixing was interested in a true god expert. He continued, "Different personal disciples are different. Like me, I'm just a nominal disciple. My master only saw me once when he took me in as a disciple. After that, he never saw me again. Only very few personal disciples will be noticed by true gods and be specially trained." It's already 5 chapters. Do I still have monthly votes? Just a little more and I'll be in the top 100. Chapter 756. Yixing nodded and said, "I see. It's not easy to meet a true god." Feng Junue smiled and said, "True gods are the pinnacle of the Dark Star land. They are extremely powerful and rarely show themselves. Of course, it is not easy to meet them. These are too far away. You can enter the Dark Star Godly Palace and become an outer disciple first. Let me tell you more about the outer disciples. There are many disciples in the Dark Star Palace. The outer gate is divided into 10 peaks. There are not only local disciples in the Dark Star continent, but also disciples from other middle-ranked continents. Disciples from middle-ranked continents are recruited once every 100 years. Ordinary middle-ranked continents only take in 10 disciples each time. Powerful middle-ranked continents take in 20. There are more than 100 middle-ranked continents under the Dark Star Palace's jurisdiction. Therefore, just the number of disciples recruited from the middle continents is more than 1,000. These disciples are all from the 10th peak of the outer sect. The first 9 peaks are all local disciples from the Dark Star continent. They are recruited once every 50 years. Yixing asked, "Do the other 9 peaks have as many disciples as the 10th peak?" Feng Junue said, "Of course. High-ranked continents are too vast. There are many 4-star families. Quasi-gods are common. Most of these families send their disciples to the Dark Star Palace to cultivate. Although the other 9 peaks only recruited disciples once every 50 years, each time they recruited a large number of disciples, at least 2,000 or more. However, the inner gate disciples are the most numerous. After becoming a 4-star king warrior, they will be promoted to Inner Gate disciples. Every 50 years, there will be more Inner Gate disciples. In total, there are more than 100,000 Inner Gate disciples. Yi Xing was shocked. The Dark Star Holy Palace was indeed a 5-star force. It was so powerful that the 7 major forces in the Starry Crescent Land were like a drop of water compared to it. Feng Junwei continued, "The Dark Star Palace is full of powerful warriors and geniuses. Yi Xing, you have to keep a low profile when you get there. You can tell from the number that the disciples recruited from the middle-ranked continents are less than 1/10 of the total. Don't fight with the local warriors in the Dark Star Palace. They are not alone." Yi Xing nodded. He was not the type to cause trouble. Feng Junwei said, "The first year as an outer disciple is the safest. There will be a quasi-god to guide you in your cultivation. After a year, you will have to rely on yourself. All the resources in the Dark Star Godly Palace can be exchanged with contribution points. Moreover, when you leave the Dark Star Godly Palace, you will need enough contribution points to exchange for them. For contribution points, you will have to venture out and serve the Dark Star Godly Kingdom." While Feng Junwei was explaining, there were other young warriors competing in the arena. Soon, everything was settled. Among the 4th to 6th places, the 3rd junior martial practitioner who had been substituted into the top 3 was Feng Xiaoxiao of the Big Dipper Sword sect. This was beyond the expectations of the other martial practitioners. No one had expected him to defeat Peng Ju of the Great Spirit sect. Qiu Yen from the Moon-Splitting sect was one of the substitutes to make it into the top 6. Among the eliminated cultivators, there were 2 substitutes who entered the top 10. Jin Guangxing was naturally one of them, and the other was Giant Spirit sect's Lu Xiong. The 10 disciples that the Dark Star Divine Palace would recruit this time were confirmed. The first was Yi Xing. Feng Zongyuan and Feng Xiaoxiao were ranked 2nd and 3rd. Peng Ju, Zhao Yanling, and Qiu Yen were ranked 4th to 6th. Xing Liuyi, Xian Chuyue, Jin Guangxing, and Lu Xiong were ranked 7th to 10th. There was no doubt that the Big Dipper Sword sect was the biggest winner. Not only did Yi Xing occupy the first place, but Feng Xiaoxiao also occupied the top 3 spots. Zhao Yanling was also ranked 4th to 6th. The 3 divine messengers quickly distributed the rewards to the quasi-gods of the 7 major sects according to their rankings. As the representative of the Big Dipper Sword sect, Feng Hanqiu received the rewards. He was so happy that he could not stop smiling. "All right, junior brothers and sisters who have become disciples of the Dark Star Divine Palace, it's time for us to return. Come on up." Zhong Litao stood at the bow of the black spaceship and announced loudly after the rewards were distributed. Yi Xing, Feng Xiaoxiao, and Zhao Yanling bid farewell to the Big Dipper Sword sect's martial practitioners. Yi Xing was not from the Starry Crescent Land. He was very happy that he had a chance to return to the Starry Crescent Land if he went to the Dark Star Divine Palace. As for Feng Xiaoxiao and Zhao Yanling, they were both happy and reluctant to leave their hometowns. They bid farewell to the people close to them. The 3 divine messengers also knew that the martial practitioners were sad about leaving home, so they did not rush them. After a while, the 10 of them boarded the black spaceship. Zhong Litao stood on the deck and looked at the 10 young martial practitioners. He said, "On the path of martial arts, there should not be too many obstacles. You can only go further in the Dark Star Divine Palace if you can't let go. If you can't, you won't have the heart to cultivate at the Dark Star Divine Palace. You might as well not go now." "I can let go," the young martial practitioners said. It was not easy for them to stand out among their peers and obtain the opportunity to become a disciple of the Dark Star Divine Palace. They were looking forward to it. How could they not go? Zhong Litao opened the cabin and said, "That's good. Let's go." The void-crossing divine ship will take some time to pass through the void passage between the Starry Crescent Land. Once we pass through the void passage, we will arrive at the Dark Star Divine Palace. Yi Xing and the others entered the cabin. Zhong Litao, Fan Wengang, and Sidhai also entered, but they went to other rooms. The cabin quickly closed. There were transparent oars on both sides of the cabin that allowed them to see outside. They could see that the void-crossing divine ship had already started moving. The void-crossing divine ship's speed went from slow to fast. Soon, it reached the speed of breaking through the void passage. It traveled through the void passage. Every time it passed through a void passage, Yixing realized that the scenery outside was different. He did not know how far it had traveled. Not long after, the void-crossing divine ship was surrounded by void passage cracks. It was obvious that they had reached the depths of the chaotic desert. These void passage cracks were troublesome even for quasi-gods. The void-crossing divine ship did not slow down. It continued to barge through the void passage cracks. It could travel through the void passage, so it was not afraid of being damaged by the void passage cracks. After a short while, they could no longer see anything outside the cabin. There were only void passage cracks. It was obvious that the void-crossing divine ship had entered the void passage. Now, they had probably left the starry crescent land. Feng Xiaoxiao sat beside Yixing. The two of them retracted their gazes from outside the cabin. They looked at each other and smiled. The two of them had once said that they would one day travel to a high-tier continent. They did not expect this wish to come true so quickly. Moreover, not only did they reach a high-tier continent, but they would also become disciples of the five-star force, the Dark Star Divine Palace. Thinking about it made them feel excited. In the cabin, most of the ancient martial art practitioners looked curiously at the void passage outside. Xing Liui, the disciple of the Celestial Elephant Palace, glanced at Yixing and Feng Xiaoxiao from time to time. His eyes were filled with viciousness. 6 o'clock. Double the last bit of time, begging for monthly votes. Chapter 759. Yixing took a few steps forward and asked, "Senior brother, what can I do for you?" The two-star Peak King glanced at Yixing and saw that he was just a 9th-star Venerable Lord. He frowned and said, "Someone who can speak." Yixing said indifferently, "I can speak." There was clearly a 2-star king on the other side, but it seemed like this 9th-star Venerable Lord was the leader. The 2-star Peak King was surprised. He sized up Yixing again and asked, "Which continent are you from?" Yixing asked, "We are from the Starry Crescent continent." "Which continent are you from?" The 2-star Peak King raised his eyebrows and said, "This king is Lu Fangyun from the Starcloud continent. My elder brother is the #1 junior genius of the Starcloud continent, Lu Li." Starcloud continent. Yixing's heart moved. Among the hundreds of continents that the Dark Star Temple recruited disciples from, there were a few that were the strongest. The Starcloud continent was one of them, and they had a 6th-level Star Nirvana realm quasi-god expert. Lu Fangyun's gaze swept over Yixing and the others with a smug look. Among the hundreds of continents, the Starcloud continent was one of the top continents. They had a strong sense of superiority towards disciples from other continents. Lu Fangyun continued, "I believe you have heard of the Starcloud continent from your elders. Our Starcloud continent's disciples are mostly quasi-gods who were accepted as personal disciples by the temple's true god experts. From now on, your Starcloud continent's disciples will follow our Starcloud continent's disciples. My elder brother, Lu Li, will be one of the overlords of the outer court. You have to listen to his orders, understand?" Yixing and the others understood that the other party was here to recruit subordinates. Yixing chuckled and said, "Sorry, I only listen to the Dark Star Temple's orders." Lu Fangyun said, "Obeying the orders of the Dark Star Temple is a must. Apart from that, you must obey my brother Lu Li's orders. Otherwise, without the protection of my Starcloud continent, you will have a hard time in the outer gate, being bullied by others." Yixing shook his head and said, "Please go back. Other than the Dark Star Divine Palace, I will not listen to anyone else's orders." Lu Fangyun's expression turned furious as he shouted, "You dare to refuse? Do you know what the consequences are?" Yixing smiled faintly, too lazy to bother with him. Lu Fangyun's enraged gaze swept across the crowd as he said in a cold voice, "All of you, don't even put the disciples of my Starcloud continent in your eyes?" Feng Zhengqian, Xing Liui, and the others froze. They were all geniuses in the Starry Crescent land and had a bunch of followers. How could they be willing to be someone's follower? This was the Dark Star Divine Palace, not the Starry Crescent Land. In the Starry Crescent Land, they were geniuses, but here, they were just ordinary outer disciples. Every 100 years in the Starry Crescent Land, there would be 10 martial artists who would become disciples of the Dark Star Divine Palace. Naturally, the situation of the outer sect would be passed down from generation to generation. The new disciples would know that there was a rule of forming cliques in the outer sect. The disciples of the 10th peak came from more than 100 middle continents. The competition between the disciples of different middle continents was fierce and no one was willing to submit to anyone. At this time, the one with the bigger fist would be the boss. Those who could stand at the top of the outer sect were the disciples of the most powerful middle continents. The disciples of the other middle continents would be ostracized by them and faced with two choices. The first choice was to become a follower of one of the strongest middle continents and listen to their orders. They would become their follower and become a force to compete with the other middle continent's disciples. The second choice was to refuse the other party's recruitment and be independent. However, they would be suppressed by the strongest middle continent's disciples and be controlled at every step in the outer sect. However, this was the Dark Star Divine Palace after all. The disciples could fight and quarrel, but they would not dare to be too obvious and kill anyone. Therefore, although it was difficult to be controlled at every step, they would not lose their lives because of it. The first choice was to live a more comfortable life and become someone's follower. The second choice was to live a more difficult life, but have their own freedom and personality. Yi Xing was obviously the second choice. He would not become anyone's follower. Everyone's thoughts were different. Yi Xing chose the second choice, but it did not mean that others would do the same. Furthermore, the others did not have Yi Xing's strength and naturally did not have Yi Xing's confidence. It was normal for them to waver. Under Lu Fangyun's cold gaze, Feng Cengtian and Xing Liuyi took the lead and stepped forward. They cupped their fists and said, "We are willing to follow senior brother Lu Li." Star Elephant Palace, Demon Ceiling Valley and Dark Moon Palace, the three major sects were united. Xianxia saw Feng Cengtian and Xing Liuyi's attitude and also stepped forward. She said, "I am willing to follow senior brother Lu Li." Lu Fangyun saw that a two-star king had been successfully recruited and was in a good mood. Xianxia was as beautiful as a flower and also bowed her head to Star Cloud Continent. This made him even happier and a smile appeared on his face. However, his expression turned cold again. He looked at the others and said, "Have you all made your decision? I'll give you one last chance. Otherwise I'll beat you up every time I see you." Feng Xiaoxiao and Zhao Yanling stood beside Yi Xing. Feng Xiaoxiao was a strong person and would not become someone's follower. Zhao Yanling naturally followed Yi Xing and Feng Xiaoxiao's opinions. As for Qiu Yan, Jin Guangxing, Peng Zhu and Lu Xiong, their expressions were ugly. They did not know how to choose. If they really wanted to, they would not want to become someone's follower. However, they were afraid that they could not bear the consequences of rejecting. After some hesitation, Jin Guangxing walked over to Lu Fangyun and said, "I am willing to follow senior brother Lu Li." After some thought, Jin Guangxing still chose to bow his head to Star Cloud Continent. "Senior brother Peng." Lu Xiong looked at Peng Zhu. Peng Zhu looked at Lu Fangyun and then looked at Yi Xing. He made a decision and said, "I will only follow senior brother Yi Xing." Although he had lost to Yi Xing, he was extremely impressed with Yi Xing's strength. He believed that Yi Xing would achieve great things in the future. Furthermore, Yi Xing had Feng Xiaoxiao by his side. In Peng Zhu's opinion, it was better to follow Yi Xing than to follow the geniuses of other continents. "I am also willing to follow senior brother Yi Xing." Lu Xiong saw the situation and naturally joined Peng Zhu. "I am also willing to follow senior brother Yi Xing." Qiu Yan also made a decision. Being a follower of a genius from another continent did not have any status. It was better to follow Yi Xing. Lu Fangyun's eyes narrowed and emitted a cold light. He swept his gaze across everyone and finally locked onto Yi Xing. Lu Fangyun said coldly, "Fine. I will let you know the consequences of rejecting the Star Cloud Continent." Yi Xing's eyes also sharpened as he said, We will mind our own business. If you don't offend me, I won't offend you. If you offend me, I will pay you back double. Chapter 760. Lu Fangyun's face darkened as he released a terrifying aura. He stared at Yi Xing fiercely as though he would attack Yi Xing at any moment. Yi Xing looked indifferent and did not take Lu Fangyun's aura seriously. Today was the registration day, the first day of the new disciples. Even if Lu Fangyun was given 1,000 guts, he would not dare to attack him here. Even though the elders of the Dark Star Divine Palace had always turned a blind eye to the fights between the disciples, it was still intolerable that a fight broke out on the first day of a new disciple's recruitment. Moreover, even if Lu Fangyun really attacked, Yi Xing was not afraid at all. Facing Lu Fangyun's anger, he was naturally calm. Seeing that Yi Xing was not frightened, Lu Fangyun retracted his aura and laughed coldly. You are Yi Xing, right? I will remember you. Be careful in the future, hee. With that, Lu Fangyun flung his robes and left. Yi Xing did not say his name. Lu Fangyun knew his name because one of Feng Zongtian, Xing Liuyi, Xian Chuyue and Jin Guangxing had secretly sent a message to Lu Fangyun. Yi Xing's gaze swept across Feng Zongtian and the other three. The four of them looked unnatural as they hurriedly turned around and entered their own rooms. Senior brother Yi Xing, what should we do? Zhao Yanling looked at Yi Xing and her voice was a little nervous. Yi Xing's strength was not the best among the outer disciples, but his speed was definitely the best. Even if he could not win, he could still run away. He was not worried that the disciples of Star Cloud Continent would bully him. However, Feng Xiaoxiao and the others were not as strong as him and were not as fast as him. This was a troublesome matter. Since they all saw Yi Xing as their backbone, Yi Xing naturally had to consider them. Yi Xing thought for a while and said, "In the future, all of you should stay in your rooms and cultivate. Try not to go out. The star yuan qi here is very abundant and suitable for cultivation. When I become one of the overlords of the outer sect, all of you will be able to roam freely in the outer sect." Everyone nodded and returned to their rooms. The next day, early in the morning, the speed communication beads of all the outer disciples on Ming Peak lit up. The Peak Master's order: all outer sect disciples are to gather at the square at the foot of the mountain. On the 10th summit, all the outer sect disciples walked out of their rooms and left the courtyard. They rose into the air and landed on the square at the foot of the mountain. Yi Xing looked around and realized that the number of outer disciples on Dark Peak was not far from 2,000. Among them, 90% were low-level Astral Sea Realm Kings, and 10% were high-level Astral Star Realm Supremacy Lords. In terms of cultivation base, apart from Feng Xiaoxiao who was an 8th star supremacy, Yi Xing who was a 9th star supremacy was at the bottom. High lords and kings were simply too fast. In just a few dozen breaths of time, all of the disciples had already arrived at the square. Moreover, under the guidance of the deacon, they had already lined up. All the disciples were wearing the sect uniform that they had received yesterday. They looked neat and uniform. 3 middle-aged men arrived in the air and stood in front of all the disciples. Yi Xing could not sense any fluctuations of astral power from them. It was obvious that their cultivation base was far inferior. The 3 of them were all star nirvana quasi-gods. An outer sect deacon immediately shouted, "Greetings, Peak Master Mo Qingyang, Elder Wu Mingtong, and Elder Zhao Yuan." The 10th summit of the outer sect had 3 quasi-gods. Peak Master Mo Qingyang was a 5th nirvana quasi-god, outer sect Elder Wu Mingtong was a 4th nirvana quasi-god, and outer sect Elder Zhao Yuan was a 3rd nirvana quasi-god. The outer sect disciples immediately showed respect on their faces. They cupped their fists and bowed in unison. In the Dark Star Divine Palace, quasi-gods below 1,000 years old were core disciples. After 1,000 years old, they would still maintain a master-disciple relationship with true God experts. However, their status would be higher and they would become elders. Among them, 1st Nirvana and 2nd Nirvana quasi-gods would become inner sect deacons. 3rd Nirvana and 4th Nirvana quasi-gods would become outer sect elders. Fifth Nirvana and Sixth Nirvana quasi-gods would become outer sect peak masters or rank 1 divine officials of the divine nation. As for quasi-god experts above 7th Nirvana, they were no different from true god experts. They would become inner sect elders of the Dark Star Divine Palace. In the sky, Missouri Qingyang, the peak master of the 10th summit of the outer sect, waved his hand. An invisible force was transmitted. The 1,000 or so disciples felt it at the same time and involuntarily stood up straight. Mo Qingyang said, "Juniors, welcome to the Dark Star Divine Palace." The Dark Star Divine Palace is a top 5-star force and one of the 3 strongest forces of the flowing light boundary. Martial artists from intermediate continents only have the opportunity to become disciples of the Dark Star Divine Palace once in 100 years. It is your fortune, your honor, and your opportunity to become a disciple of the Dark Star Divine Palace. I hope that you will seize this opportunity and cultivate diligently in the Dark Star Divine Palace. Mo Qingyang gave a long opening speech. In the martial pavilion of this summit, there are black-level medium-grade and upper-grade cultivation techniques and martial skills. You can choose any one of them to cultivate. You are limited to one. On the first day of every month, Elder Zhao Yuan will explain the cultivation techniques to you. On the second day, Elder Wu Mingtong will explain the cultivation techniques to you. If you have any questions, you can ask them. In your rooms, there's an energy gathering array. The astral yuan qi here is much denser compared to the outside world, and is suitable for cultivation. Secondly, at the peak of this mountain, there's also a cultivation pagoda with a total of 3 levels. In the cultivation pagoda, the speed of cultivation is faster, and the higher the level, the denser the astral yuan qi would be. The disciples immediately became spirited. This was related to the speed of their cultivation. This was what they were most interested in. Mo Qingyang continued, "There are many of you, and the space in the cultivation pagoda is limited. Therefore, only the most outstanding disciples can cultivate in the cultivation pagoda. This god will divide the outstanding disciples into 3 levels. The first level can cultivate in the 3rd floor of the cultivation pagoda. The second level can cultivate in the 2nd floor of the cultivation pagoda. The 3rd level can cultivate in the 1st floor of the cultivation pagoda. In the 1st level, there are 8 disciples with peak 3-star king battle strength. They are Tu Qianzhang, Zheng Haoyu, Sun Gang, Lu Li, Yu Feifei, Gao Jian, and Zhen Zihan. Yi Xing, Feng Xiaoxiao, and the others' hearts tightened when they heard Mo Qingyang's words. They had heard Lu Li's name. Yesterday, Lu Fangyan, who had come to the 71st courtyard, had said that his brother, Lu Li, was the #1 genius of the younger generation of the Star Cloud continent. It seemed like he wasn't bragging. He was not even 35 years old and already had the strength of a peak 3-star king. It was very likely that he was that peak 3-star king. He was not simple. Mo Qingyang's voice continued. In the 2nd level, there are 26 disciples with the strength of an ordinary 3-star king. They are Ming Qiudia, Zhen Dongyue, Mo Tianhao. In the 3rd level, there are 87 disciples with the strength of a peak 2-star king. They are Tu Wanqing, Lu Fengyun, Yi Xing. Yi Xing heard his name in the list of the 3rd level. You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.